Good evening, Pours with Patriots. Welcome to episode 34. Can't believe 34. It's a little over a year now we've been running this. Been trying to get my guest on for a little while. We had a little bit of a scheduling snafu, but a good one, I think, for a reason. So
absolutely.
But my guest tonight, episode 34. The Marines are back in the house. It's been a little while since we've had a Marine. So we have Sergeant Retired Sean Belliston. Great story. If you've seen some of the pictures we posted, looking forward to hearing all the story because I've heard some tidbits, from hanging out where you work and there's some other people that know you. So welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
And excited about it. Got a good story?
Absolutely. I definitely have some good stories. There's plenty of those, but
that's the whole part, right? Like that's the whole idea. So what's cool about Sean, not originally an Ohio guy.
Nope.
Right, so that's cool. But he did move to Ohio, so it's kind of my.
I still feel like I'm an Ohioan though, because I've been here long enough. So.
I like making fun of the Ohioans. I don't know why. I'm close to 9 years now, so I'm getting close to claiming it as myself. So, if you've seen some of the pictures I posted, Sean's obviously a Marine, and then one of the things that we're going to talk in detail about is he was actually a dog handler. So, my first quote, the dog handler quotes are rough to read.
Very.
And we'll get into that before. I found myself last night searching them down and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna start crying. Nobody's gonna know, but so we have some really good quotes, and then so the first one we're gonna go with is the relationship between a military working dog and a military dog handler is about as close as a man and a dog can become. You see this loyalty, the devotion, unlike any other, and the protectiveness, and that's from Robert Krass. So I thought that was pretty good quote. I mean, you'd probably tell me if that hits home, right?
Right. I mean, right on par. It's right on par. The bond is there. So.
And before we go, we should, before we get into it, should we talk about who's joining us? Do you want to talk about who's with us right now on the table you brought, or you want to wait? You want
to? Either or, it doesn't matter. Freeze.
Right.
Freeze, my dog, the boy, Staff Sergeant Freeze. Excuse me.
Oh, he outranked you then.
Absolutely, always one ahead of us.
Nice. So we are joined. I didn't want to leave him out, but we have Freeze with us. So you've seen the pictures, beautiful dog, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about him and your relationship with him. And I don't think it is. It's pretty amazing, and we found out it's a good story. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than what happened. So. I'm glad that we're going to go with the story we have. He's no longer with us, obviously, but lived a long life. How many years?
14.
Right, 2 deployments.
2 deployments. One with me, and then one afterwards. Partial deployment, I guess you would say, but.
And that's a great story.
Two more than me. I'll say
He's
that.
Got me beat by 1 too. So I think 1 is good though in some aspects, but no, that's cool. So we'll talk about it. So like we said before, I alluded. Sean was born in Arizona, Phoenix.
Yep, Phoenix,
and moved to Ohio.
Columbus. Yep. Elementary school. Elementary school. Was young. We moved around a little bit. We were in Utah for a little bit. My only brother. Portland. We lived in Portland for a little while. That's where he was born. And then just migrated and made Columbus home. So.
Do you remember Phoenix at all, or still?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most of our family is still out west. Like my grandfather, he's Phoenix. Well, Mesa, Phoenix, basically same thing. And then I've got an uncle, my dad's brother, who's in Yuma. He works for the Proving Grounds. Very, very important guy there, but still family out west. Another grandpa in NorCal, and then others in Utah. So yeah, pretty much we're the only ones that are here. We've got some distant, I wouldn't say distant, but like my great uncle and his wife, and they live here now. So pretty much just us here.
So Ohio's the home now.
Yeah, definitely.
Buckeye Valley High School. So.
BV for a short time. For a short time, yeah, I was there. So we moved from Columbus to Hilliard when I was in 6th grade, and so I ended up. That would have been junior year. We moved to Ostrander, and then I found out that I was going to Buckeye Valley. So I was there 11th and 12th grade. So I was only there for a little bit, but it was definitely an adjustment from the city to the rural high school, if you will.
Yeah, because Buckeye Valley is still considered like the rural one. It's not really rural, but it kind of is for where we live, though, right?
For me, it was definitely a culture shock. But in a good way. It was still a good, I don't know. atmosphere. Everyone was super welcoming. Still have some really good friends that I met there in the short time that I was there. So it definitely a little bit different. The drive your tractor to school day and being one of like 4 people that were there and being asked why I'm not partaking and I'm unsure of what like the teacher had asked. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. And she goes, it's opening of deer season. And I'm like, not a hunter, not a hunter at
Don't have
all.
a tractor,
So,
not a hunter.
not not my bag, but just not I don't know, just didn't partake in it, I guess. So it's definitely a little culture shock, but good in a good way.
So decide in high school that you're going to join the military, right?
Absolutely.
So any influence on that decision, or were you just going rogue, or what brought you to that?
So my best friend, so he moved down from Youngstown to Hilliard about the same time that we moved from Columbus. So we were kind of like outcasts because everyone grew up together in elementary school and all that. He was kind of what is it? It's not JVS. It's Tolles Technical Center. So he was at like the vocational whatever for doing police stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I'm like, my uncle was a Marine. I'm like, interesting. And kind of just spitballing off of that. And yeah, so between him and then obviously my uncle, that was probably like the biggest influence. And meeting people, just him being the person that he is out at YPG, just talking with guys. My parents had me go out there. We're like, you need to at least talk to all the branches and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm pretty dead set on where I'm going. I know where I'm going, but I'll respect your wishes and do this. And oddly enough, the only the 2 guys that it sunk in for me, both prior Marines, still Marines, whatever. But it was, I don't know, right there. That was just the calling. I don't know. I felt like being like the skateboarder and like metal and just stuff like that, it didn't really fit. And so a lot of my friends and even family were like, you don't like being told what to do. Why are you joining the Marine Corps? I'm like, because I feel like I can do it. I don't know. It was just one of those things. And 18 years old, I'm like, all right, I can get to it. And lo and behold, good.
Yeah,
so
right.
It just worked out. But
That's I think that's the most interesting part is, as we've had guests on, is figuring out what their motivation is. And
absolutely,
it is a lot of the time there's that one impact that something happened, which we've had a lot of people on there with the 9/11 crew, I call them. And then there are people that had like me who had an influence, like my dad or an uncle or
sure.
somebody else that's like you kind of knew. Like somebody asked me the other day, like, how did you know? When did you know? Like I felt like I knew early. Like when did you know? When did it hit you? Was it 18, or did you think about it before that? Or
before, definitely before. Probably, I mean, it would have been junior year. So I graduated when I was 17. I was the young guy from my class and stuff like that. And even the people that, I don't know, peers, older and stuff, guys, really weren't. It was everybody's going to college and doing all this, and I was not my high priority by any means. I just had little interest, but didn't have the money, stuff like that. Didn't apply myself, if you want to say that, but good student and all that. But it just, I don't know, it just clicked. And it was like, hey, well, if let's do this for 4 years. And then if I decide to get out, at least school, I've got a little bit more, I don't know, ammunition or fuel for the fire for it. But it was definitely probably junior year, end of junior year for sure, where I knew 100%. And still, like I said, respecting my parents' wishes and stuff like that, and talking to everybody and doing all that. And it definitely solidified speaking with my uncle and prior service, Marines. And again, like I said, Army, Navy, all of them. I talked to everyone. I'm like, your boss, I don't know what it is, but I really like him because he's prior Marine. I'm like, interesting. So kind of full circle coming back to it. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like just the way that he carried himself, the way that he was, the way that my uncle carries himself. He's a Gulf War guy. He was a tanker. So he actually, got to unfortunately be part of all that and do all that. So it was kind of like the connection there. Never really spoke about much. Again, young and being distant from Ohio to there, to Yuma. It was just one of those things that didn't really come up talking with the kid. And even my dad had said, like, just didn't really talk about it. Just never really, I I don't know, never really got brought up, just kind of left it as it is. And we've had many conversations afterwards where we've kind of definitely the Marine bond for sure, but also even more so where it's definitely, he had an overwhelming presence there, I would say. I don't know if he knows that or not, but
well, hopefully he's listening and he knows it now, which is important. I think that's important to say, is that person that did help you. Like it's hard to say that's it's hard to get that out, and especially like when you're a tough military guy, you're supposed to not be emotional. But
sure,
but there are definitely people that I say it all the time. I won't. My dad is the reason why I did what I did, 100%, and I've been able to tell them that. I think that's important, and the talking the stories. That's like what people don't understand. Why the reason we're doing this is to share the stories, because a lot of the times you don't feel like you have anything in common with that person, and then all of a sudden you go to war, they went to war, and then you find out that you've always had a lot of things in common, but do you even have other things in common that most people don't know, and it's important to be able to talk about that. And I hope
he definitely, like I said, having the conversations afterwards, it's come, I don't know, not full circle, if you will, but definitely a heavy influence. My mom's brother also, I can't leave him out too. He was Navy, but he was a submariner. So it was like, oh, I can't do that, man. Started out oddly enough as Army artillery, and then ended up switching branches and going to the Navy. And then he was one of those guys, which I don't, especially now with all the stuff going on, I was like, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine, man. And he's like, yeah, it was.
Well, I think the difference is, I'm glad you brought that up. This is one of the craziest things ever. Like, I'm hoping it's a little bit safer what your uncle was doing, but I mean, in the recent news, like, and if anybody's thinking about doing that, don't. There's probably like there's a lot of like things that I think the military, like the safety briefings, were always like, these are fucking stupid that they're telling us all this stuff. But then like you watch this video and you're like, holy shit.
Seeing
these people never obviously have listened to anybody like tell them what's right or wrong. I'm like, as soon as the guy whipped out the controller, the Nintendo controller, I've been like, get me the fuck off this thing. This is not happening.
This is it's not what I thought it was going to be. I paid how much for that? Like, okay, we'll go from there. But
so I'm pretty sure like the Navy submarines a little bit. I mean, at least they have seats in them. Like some
sure. I mean, like movie
a beacon
theaters,
attracts them. Yeah,
all kinds of stuff. The way that he described it made it. And again, talking to a kid who was never in this, prior to, and it's like, oh, why don't we hear from, Uncle Rob? It's like, oh, he's somewhere just in the water. It's like, okay, and then pop up and give a phone call and stuff like that. But it was described to me as, oh, this is not so bad. Just, I guess, as the Marine Corps was too. We're like, oh, dude, I just lift weights all day and that's all I do. Oh, it doesn't sound too bad. I just eat and lift weights, which clearly I'm not a weightlifter, but for some reason that spoke to me. I'm like, that sounds like a good gig. Let's do this, So
you decided in the Marine Corps, barely. I'm joking. I've noticed too, like the Marines, of the guests I've had, you guys are the most, and gals are the most like dedicated about what you're going to do. Like I think, like you guys know you're going to be Marines, and I kind of respect that. It's a different thing. You talk to a lot of other guests are like, oh, I thought about this, I thought about that, but like most Marines, like, I want to be a Marine. That's it. Like for the different reasons. Like we had some guys on, like Joe was like, I want to be a Marine. Like just there's no other choice, which is it's a pretty common thing with Marines. I think it's a small branch, right?
Different breed.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, yeah, it's definitely a different. I mean,
I don't know. I also think a little bit of it would have been, just people not saying like you can't do it, because I was always, an athlete and I wrestled and baseball and did all that. And so like physically I felt like I could do it, but it was more of like so many people are counting me not out, but
yeah,
you really want to do that? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Really,
I don't really know. I don't really know what I'm going to do, but yes, that's what I want to do. And kind of being that anti, I don't know, man, whatever you want to. I just didn't like being told what to do, and that's
anti-establishment. That's like
it was just like not bad or anything. Again, like I said, skateboarding and stuff, and just did my own thing. And like you realize it's a lot different. I'm like, no, I don't, but I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And how it worked out, I guess.
But I think as I get older and like you talk to more people, is I think still is a misconception that everyone in the military, everyone's just a rule follower. They're like blindly. I mean, and that's not a lot of people. You know, there really are not people that like to be told what to do.
No.
Which is the craziest thing. And then you go into an organization where like you could be the lowest person and everyone, you could have 15 people down here and you are literally the last person. And you have 14 people that are going to tell you what to do constantly. And you're kind of like, I just want to be number 13 so I could tell the other two people what to do. And it's just, you work your way, you keep moving. Like, and before you know, you're like, damn, 10 of you are going to listen to what I'm going to do. But it's one of those things, like I always tell, you know, like there's definitely people that don't like to be told. You kind of know what it is, but that misnomer that I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like the establishment. I think that's crazy because most of the people, they don't, and they're very, very successful in the military. It's
for sure
interesting.
I think being so young too, like I didn't grow up like strict or anything like that, but my dad was very forward, so it didn't really. I'm not going to say he was a drill instructor by any means, but it was kind of par where it's like, oh, okay, I'm used to being able to do this stuff. Like, hey, you guys got to fucking rake leaves. You got to do this. Okay, just give me a task, I can get it done. And the Marine Corps, especially early on, military in general, you just be here at this time, do this, and that's it. It's very, very, cut and dry, which maybe that's the guidance that I needed, which clearly is what it was. So just growing up and becoming an individual man, I guess. So it was, yeah.
So you decide on a branch. What made you go artillery?
So honestly, I don't even remember what my ASVAB was, but I had pretty much the pick of the litter. The only conversation I ever had with my mom, who was not against me joining the Marine Corps by any means, but she was very hesitant just because of everything that was going on. So 9/11 happened when I was in 8th grade. So not young, but young enough that kind of didn't really get the whole bigger picture of everything and see all the stuff that's going on. And then, Afghanistan obviously was going on, kind of not bombs, basically is what everybody remembers being dropped and stuff. And then going into Iraq, that was like the big thing where she's like, I'd appreciate if you didn't enlist infantry, because we had another buddy, Jake, who I'm 0311, just die hard, just get some. Like that's what he wanted to do.
The other 0311 in the room was just doing a dance when they said that. The funniest thing. He's over there, Chris is dancing about it.
So he was very, very gung-ho, and he was a wrestler. Like we wrestled together and grew up together and stuff too. And he was dead set on it. And my mom was just like, I don't know if that's going to work out. And my best friend was his grandfather and his uncle, police officers. One's Gahanna, his grandfather was Youngstown. So he had that mindset of like, I'm going to go MP or something like that, and then use it as a transitioning point for when I get out. And me, I'm like, okay, well, go to MEPS, do all that stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do. Like I had an interest in, I wanted to be a firefighter for a while. I don't know why. It seems crazy to me now, but I remember I wanted to do, I don't know, I want to be a firefighter and crash fire rescue. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but what do you going from there? Okay, that's what you're going to go through. And then the MEPS disqualification, color deficient, colorblind is what I am. So my jobs went from to very, very minimal. So it was like MP, artillery, infantry, I don't know, just very like like technical jobs, because even doing all the workup stuff with like talking to my uncle and stuff, his wife at the time is a Marine as well, or what was in at the time. And she kind of do something that you can transition if you decide to get out. If you're like not sure you want to do 4 and then get out, use it to, I don't know, better yourself as you get out. And I'm like, okay, whatever. My question with the recruiter was like, okay, so this is where I'm at now. What can I do that I probably can't do in the civilian world? And infantry was out. It's like, you want to blow shit up? I'm like, I sure do. I want to blow shit up. I was like, oh, that sounds like I'll never be able to do that other than in the military. So kind of just, I don't know, worked itself out. I don't know. I just jumped on it, I guess. But
so you become a red leg.
Mm-hmm.
You're Parris Island Marine?
Parris Island, yep. So I was there. I graduated from high school in 06. I waited through the summer. I worked. I figured, why go to Parris Island when it's 100 plus degrees and all this stuff? I'm like, well, maybe I'm going to enjoy my Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that. So I left in 07, January of 07. Graduated on 420. So it was kind of that weird time frame where you didn't really have a chance to enjoy the weather, because weather was nice. The guys from like Florida and stuff were like, it's so cold up here. I'm like, this is nice. So other than the other, sand fleas and all the stuff that everybody knows about, but it was perfect on my point. I feel like, just timing wise. So Parris Island.
Then MCT.
Yeah.
So talk about MCT. So what MOSs go there? So
everybody that's so the weirdest thing is it's all the School of Infantry, but then there's Marine combat training. So like the infantrymen that are 0300 field, like the 11s, the machine gunners, all that stuff, they go through ITB, which is I think Infantry Training Battalion, I think is what it is, but it's all still underneath that full School of Infantry, if you will. But there's some, I don't know, blowback being a non-true infantryman. You guys didn't do combat. You're in there with females and all this stuff, and you guys got guys that are admin and this and that and whatever, but very condensed. I think it was 5 weeks is what it was. But it's basic, simple stuff of, this is how you talk on a radio. This is how you clear a building, even though it's not a building, it's cinder blocks. And, every Marine is a rifleman, as they say, but not every Marine is an infantryman. So that's where the infantrymen definitely toot their own horn at that. So
we can let them have that.
Absolutely.
Chris is over there pounding his chest. That's great. But yeah, because I heard a good story. Like I listened to a lot of other podcasts and was talking about the MCT, and a Marine that he thought he was going to the infantry school. Got kind of, the recruiter steered him wrong, and so he got to there, the MCT, and said, "I'm supposed to go to the infantry school, the other thing." And so he said it was going on for like 10 days, and they was like, "Oh, it's going to happen, tomorrow. It's it's going to do this." So he said he just refused to train. Like he told everybody, "I'm refused to train," and he said they just screaming and yelling. I was like the worst. I'm not going to do it. And they were like, after like an hour, they came back and like, okay, now you're going to go over to the other school. And the guy did become a Marine Raider, one of the first couple of guys that were Marine Raiders. Which this story was great. He's like, he said, I'd recommend it. Everybody refuse to train and see how that goes for you in the Marine Corps. See how far it actually worked for him. So he's like, all you people that are there now, you should try to give it a shot. It worked for me, but it may not work for you. But I thought that was great. So, so you leave there, you go to beautiful Fort Sill.
Fort Sill, yeah, lovely Lawton, Oklahoma.
Great place.
No,
I've been there before now.
It's just a base in Oklahoma. Nothing against people from Oklahoma or anything, but it was kind of what I expected. So just the base and the military town that was outside of it. So odd being there, being a small detachment of Marines that are on an Army base of, I don't know how many soldiers are there, but we had squad bays that were right, I guess, I don't want to say different quad, but different wing, whatever it was, with new soldiers that were going through like boot camp basically. And so we're eating at the same chow hall, and they've got their recruits that are going through, and then they've got the drill sergeants that are like, yelling at them and doing all this stuff. And we're like, we're fucking Marines, man. Like you can't yell at me. And it's like, guys, I'm getting an omelet, and the guy next to me is a soldier who's getting whatever, just mixed in the line and stuff. It was very, very unique and didn't last very long. I was there only a couple of weeks, and then they ended up moving the Marines to, oddly enough, a different side of the base because there were so many issues that naturally come up, and a bunch of gung-ho guys who are like, we're fucking Marines, you can't tell us what to do, and you don't, I don't know what your rank, but I'm
a Marine. I don't care if you're sergeant first class.
Just so I guess gray to it or new, but moved us to the other side of the base with all the people that were getting out, the druggies, the whatever reason getting separated. There's a few gals there that were pregnant, I guess. Again, we had to separate ourselves even more so from them because young, influential military, members, not really fleet by any means, but stay away from them. They're on their way out, and that's all I remember. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do my part to stay as far away from them as I possibly can. If they come out and smoke pit or whatever, don't fucking talk to them. They're a bunch of nasties. And it's okay, but don't know any better, but I'm going to do as I'm told type deal. So yeah, from there, after leaving Fort Sill, we ended up going our whole class minus our top. I think our top guy for our class was a reservist, and he obviously didn't get to pick his dream sheet. And I remember filling this dream sheet out when our instructor came around, Staff Sergeant Baez. He's like, "Hey, put on here where you want to go: Okie, Hawaii, North Carolina, Pendleton, whatever." And I Okinawa. That was the one that was the only thing that I put Okinawa as my number one, and Lejeune was my number two, which was so weird because I had a bunch of friends who left right after high school, like after we graduated, did boot camp through the summer and all that. So they were just a little bit ahead of me, 6 months, 7 months, whatever. And Okinawa just stuck with me based on the stories from my uncle of scuba diving and just, I don't know, the whole reason why you join is to, in my mind, see the world, which I was fortunate enough to see a lot of the United States, but I wanted to go beyond and just, I don't know, just go see the world. So we all got Camp Pendleton. Minus, I think it went
so much for that dream sheet. You're going to Pendleton.
So the top, the reservist. I think those, like, it kind of just went this hierarchy, and then the first guy, I think Yost was his name, he picked Hawaii, and so he got to go to Hawaii. So basically, our entire class minus the reservist went to Pendleton. So that was I couldn't have been any better how things worked out because Pendleton was awesome. I'm so glad that I did not get Camp Lejeune. Nothing against the Lejeune guys, but spend time there hanging out and doing all that. It's just a lot more to do in Southern California.
Oh yeah, Southern California is a beautiful place. Not too far from San Diego. I mean, a lot of stuff you can do. So first assignment was the 11th Marine Regiment, Headquarters Battery in Pendleton. Yep. So you're not there very long, and you decide to.
So I was actually with. I was with Regiment for almost 3 years and some change. Had a couple of workups. I was supposed to go to Iraq one time, didn't do it. Just non-needed MOSs at the time. Again, scaling back. So this would have been 2008, 2009. So they're kind of like, I guess it would have been beginning of 2008, scaling back. So it just didn't happen. Kind of got snuffed in that realm of, I want to get some. Like,
what did that feeling talk that? Because you were talking about earlier. Like, what is that? Like, explain that feeling to people. Like, you're ready. I've been there before. You're ready to go. You're ready to do this, and then you don't go. Like, what does that? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to you?
Yeah, it was kind of kicking the dick. Honestly, it was just kind of like I'm getting jacked around and slowly building that sandbag of disgruntledness that we all have with respective branches and stuff like that. It was hard. It was kind of hard where it was like, I see so many people that are going and getting an opportunity. Like, I'm in the field all the time. I prefer to be in the field just because there was less bullshit to deal with. Honestly, like, make your bunk and do all this, look good in uniform, drill, march. You're assigned to this working party. You're going to do this for some dipshit you don't even know who's retiring and whatever, and you're just a body and you're filling a spot, and it was frustrating dealing with that. So the field was definitely more up my speed. You're with your guys and you're not really getting fucked with. You're just hanging out and doing your job, practicing what you're supposed to play, and never having that opportunity to actually play is what really sunk. And again, there's that I don't know how to describe it. Comparison, if you will, with you can look at someone's chest and you haven't done shit. You haven't done shit. And that was the thing of like being a corporal, and it's like, oh, I got 3. This is so wild. And then there's some guy that you see randomly out and about, and you're like, man, he's got. I don't know. It was like not chasing it by any means, but you wanted to just get some. I don't know. You just
yeah.
wanted to implement what you've practiced for so long to finally be able to get to do it. And that was how it was going down. And I was supposed to go to Afghanistan for a year after the Iraq didn't go through, which I guess worked out in my favor because I would have been doing nothing at Camp Leatherneck, just hanging out, helping out lieutenants and whatever, getting fire missions that are coming in and stuff. And that didn't happen. So I was super disgruntled and on the fence about like re-enlisting and all that. My Master Guns, Master Gunnery Sergeant Joseph Bennett, the senior Marine, our entire regiment, happened to be my boss. So my daddy was more important than most people's daddy. And that, you know, how it comes down to, it's like, oh, well, Gunnery Sergeant so-and-so said, and well, Master Gunnery Sergeant said this. And, okay, trumped card, like, you know.
Right.
So he, I was on the fence about re-enlisting. Just wasn't sure. I was kind of tired of getting jacked around. And one of the old supply officers who I used to go and run with worked right across the hall from like our office. And he went down to 1st Battalion, 11th Marines, one of our battalions, and was basically going to be their new CO. He was a major, but he was, I guess, frocked. I think it's frocked is what they called it, to lieutenant colonel. And so he was a lieutenant colonel full on because he was, you know, going to get selected or got selected and all that, just didn't pay or whatever the fine details of it are. But he was going down there, and one of the assistant ops chiefs that was in at regiment, he went down and took over as the ops chief for 111. So again, never burning bridges as we do, because Marine Corps is a small world, getting hooked up in that sense of, hey, come down here. We're getting ready to go to Afghanistan and you're good to go. You're on the fence about it. Maybe you can, we can pull some strings type deal. And they wanted me to re-enlist. And my roommate and I, we both fucking drug our feet. I'm like, I'm not doing it until it's in, like, not even like one of those guys of like, you get to go overseas and you re-enlist and, you know, tax-free and all that stuff was not even on my radar. I'm just like, I want it to happen before I actually commit to do something. And they're like, well, you're not going to go unless you re-enlist. I'm like, I guess I'm not going to go. And that was kind of like calling their bluff, which is very, very rare that you get to do. And they're like, okay, well, we have to send this up to division for you to extend, just based on time deployment and then coming back, like the transition time that they make, that they have guys do now, which is probably smart on their front rather than like the turn and the burn and all that stuff. So yeah, just happened to extend to go on deployment, and it worked out. I don't know, it worked out, and get down to headquarters, and it was you're not a shitbag. You're borderline here of should you or not. Let's maybe not pad it, but any interest in like dog handling. Who here has had dogs? I think is what it was, something like stupid like that. A bunch of us raise our hand like,
we're gonna get somebody to raise their hand on that one. We got them.
What kind of dog did you have? Okay, over here. And I was like, I grew up with labs. Okay, you, and you. And again, still picking guys that were maybe not senior guys, at least how it worked out for ops platoon. A few of us that became dog handlers were guys that were good to go, you know, proficient at their job, doing all that stuff. Just, we don't want to put the first non-infantrymen or I guess, yeah, engineers, combat engineers were the only other ones that had dogs. So we were the first non-infantry or engineer unit to be afforded the option to have the dogs. So it was kind of pretty eyes on for us, where they're like, don't fuck this up. Don't get in trouble. Don't do any of this. This is going to make or break it if artillery is going to be in the mix for this type deal. So it worked out. Yeah, it worked out.
So you get selected to do that, and you guys in the Marine Corps call it the IDD, IED Detection Dog Handler.
Mm-hmm.
So
which is another acronym, which is super long. You know, IED Detection Dog. It's like, that's improvised explosive device detection dog, and it's like, that's just one more thing. IDD, simple. That's how they dumbed it down. But
and so that's additional training. They don't just, you ended up going back to North Carolina, Southern Pines.
Yep, they sent us to Southern Pines. There was a company, one of the competing companies for the contract for the Marine Corps. It was K2. It was K2, and then I think K9I was the other one. So they basically gave K2 the contract for the year, and then AK9I got like the contract for a year, and then they number crunch and see who's more efficient and all that stuff. But yeah, I went through K2, a bunch of civilians. Then there were some prior service members there and stuff. One of the guys, Bobby Lane, he was MP, but he was a dog handler when he was in the Marine Corps, early 90s, but he was got out and became a police officer and did all that. So they basically certified and trained dogs for the police departments all in that general Southern Pines area, which the Southern Pines area was a bit different, being the only Marines there. The other military members that were there were pretty important guys, as we were told, which I guess that's where a
tier 1 unit. Yeah,
that's where those guys get to go and do all that. So you're bumping into guys and stuff like that. Like, oh, you guys are Marines? I'm like, yeah. How can you tell? And they're like, well,
because you got that awful haircut.
Yeah.
No.
And I was not a turd by any means, but I pushed the boundaries a lot with that, just because you're in Southern California and I can put a hat on and disappear basically, or meld, whatever you want to call it, blend with the civilians and stuff. So it was a really cool time, very, very unique experience. I think it was 5 weeks, doing everything. I basically learned how to handle the dog. That's while we were there, was learning how to handle the dog. The dogs were already trained. Basically, it was to teach us the skill set and what to read and glorified pooper picker upper, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But it was definitely a crash course in what we thought we were going to be doing, and turned out not to be that, because it was all 5s and 25s, like getting out of your vehicle, like searching and doing that. It's all off leash. So it was pretty unique.
So the dogs are really training you guys pretty much. Then,
yeah,
right?
They're already trained. We're just there to kind of pick up signals and stuff like that. And you learn. We learned clearly like how to read and handling skills and stuff like that. And a lot of it was on the job training, if you will, getting a feel for it, because we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. And that first day at the school, or the course, I had no idea what to expect. None of us did really. And we get out, and then this guy walks way down this, like, I call it a fire break, but like power line break, like in between the tree line. He walks way down with a bucket, just dropping bumpers. Basically, they like the retrieving, I don't know, the easiest. It looks like a giant dick is what it looks like, but that's kind of what it looks like. But so the guy, he pulls the dog out of the truck, sits there, blows his whistle, the dog sits, and that had my attention from the get-go. I'm like, ooh. And it was just a real quick little tweet, basically, and then sits it down back, and then this dog goes and goes and goes, and I'm like, is this dog gonna fucking find that? Like, there's no way. I'm like, I'm like sitting
that
back,
dog
like,
is running away.
Like, yeah, that's exactly what would. So I'm like, this is, looking at my buddies and stuff, I'm like, this is some bullshit. Like, this is not. This is
like, that dog is not coming back.
There's no way. There's no way. And again, the guys that were training us, Bobby Lane, like I said, was Marine. The other gentleman, Bobby George, was a renowned retriever trainer in the retriever world. I guess the easiest way to describe it would be like, if you ever seen like the trial games on ESPN, where they send the dogs jumping off the dock and right. Tweeting the whistle, or even the blind hiding and stuff like that. Same thing, like hand signals, commands to try and get them, on or close to where it is. So for us, it was a bit unique for sure when it came down. But after that dog went out there and grabbed that and brought it back, I'm like, this is serious. Like, they know. Yeah. And I'm like, so they fucking saw you put it there or something. And he's like, how could they see if they're in the truck? And I'm like, all right, this is.
You're like, we couldn't even find that fucking thing.
But yeah, marine logic. We're just like, all right, well, maybe they could smell it or something like that. And lo and behold, scent being a huge, obviously, portion of it, and getting well educated at it. But it was an eye opener for sure, because I kind of didn't know what to expect. I'm like, I'm already here, did the workup, we're supposed to be going, and now we're going to be like a week behind the rest of our battalion because we all got sent to do this course. And that was the other thing of like, don't fuck up, because everybody else is gone, and if you fuck up, then you're definitely not going type deal. So everybody was minding their P's and Q's and stuff like that. So it worked itself out. I don't know.
So you did pretty well. You finished top of the class.
Yes.
So the dogs trained you well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oddly enough, Freeze and I, he was not the first dog. He was actually not. He was non-deployable, actually, just from the get-go.
So when did you meet Freeze? We're gonna get to that.
So that was
at Southern Pines.
At Southern Pines. Yep.
Okay.
So he was actually assigned to another guy that was going through the course to be a dog handler, and he was a little bit timid, and they kind of matched the dog up accordingly to the person and the individual. It's more into,
like
I guess.
Like
yeah. Oh, he's very stern. Well, this one's kind of timid, so like try to sweeter dog with the sweeter guy type deal. This guy's a dick. This dog's a dick. And Freeze had went through the certification to deploy one time and passed with flying colors on everything except attitude. And I was like, this is crazy. And I remember like the trainers telling us that. And I'm like, from one guy who doesn't like to be told what to do to have an attitude problem, because that was like my thing. Was, oh, you have an attitude problem. I'm like, no, I just don't see the need to do it this way. But okay, I'll do it this way. And then you get yelled at. And I feel like he was very same mindset. So it worked out. And then I don't know, bonded so well that they decided to send him through the course, or the follow-on certification for like pre-deployment for the dogs. The dogs have to go through all that stuff too. So coming from Southern Pines, they go through, there's a brief stop in Texas, but then they end up going out to Yuma, to the proving grounds. And that's basically where this is what it's going to be like in country, like realish scenarios. I mean, you're finding det cord, you're finding, the smallest amounts of stuff. It's amazing. The nose knows, as they say. So he ended up passing, and they're like, yeah, he's good to go. You guys, you're the team now. So it just worked out. But
so I had the question here, like, did you pick him or did he pick you?
I feel like he picked me, honestly, because the first guy, I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything, but he said he was a little timid, and we were all sitting there waiting our turn to go through whatever training element we were doing, and Freeze just hikes his leg up and pisses all over Davis's boots. And I thought it was hilarious. We were all laughing, and one of the old trainers was like, absolutely the fuck not, and like goes off, and he's like, grab that dog, grab the choke chain, and you need to walk this dog. And walking is the nice way of saying I'm in charge, not you. And that's a very like alpha dominance thing that dogs do, and Freeze was definitely the alpha out of all of our dogs. So he did not work out with Davis, and so kind of matching things up and moving things around and stuff like that, and got him, and we killed it apparently at the course. Like I said, the top dog award, which is the lamest thing ever. I remember when they were like top of the class, the top dog award. I'm like, you guys couldn't come up with anything else other than top dog. Like, it sounds like
it's like Top Gun, top dog. It's like, it sounds pretty cool.
I guess
it's a movie. I think this is the new movie. I think, like, like you could, go in there, like the Top Gun. I feel like we could talk to somebody about this.
It was
a lot of emotion with the dogs,
for sure. And again, the bond goes through. That's some of the fundamentals that they teach or taught us. You feel the energy through the actual lead, through the leash. It's an unbreakable bond, as most quotes and stuff, I'm sure, going through, but it's a real connection that you actually get with the dog. And there's dogs that work well together, and then with their handlers, and then dogs that don't, and it just sometimes doesn't work, so they mix and match. And I honestly feel like they choose us, is how it goes.
So how old was he when you guys deployed?
So he would have been, I graduated in April from boot camp. He was born May 20th, a year afterwards. So he would have been 3. Is when, he was 3 years old when I had him. 3. Yeah.
Is that like the prime
3-ish.
age for those dogs, or is that?
Yeah,
Is that like
and again, there's no rhyme or reason because there were some really young dogs. I mean, no dogs underneath a year, and most of these dogs that are selected for this specific program were dogs that basically came through top tier breeding, and they're selecting and impurities and things like that. They can see traits, or oh, he doesn't have the drive, not going to work. Oh,
yeah.
on his own program, whatever. Like they can. The old timers can see that, and that's basically how it was. It wasn't like how Vietnam was, where you would have like civilians, even World War II, that would like volunteer their dog or donate their dog essentially to, the fight. And the Marine Corps paid some pretty heavy money for these dogs, which makes sense coming from that top tier. But it's not like, I'm not saying like a dog off the street couldn't do it. I mean, any dog, as long as it passes all the criteria, sure, would probably do it. Ours specifically were just labs. So
That's what I was going to ask. He was a lab then?
Yep.
All of them were labs?
All of ours were labs. Yeah. Penny, she was like a copper color, and she was like a really small little bitch dog. I don't know. She looked like the color of a penny, literally. So she was kind of, but she passed with flying colors and all that stuff, but predominantly labs. Why they would give you a black dog going to one of the hottest places in the world where you're physically active and doing all that, I don't know. But we had pretty much all black labs other than Lydia and Penny. Yeah, Lydia was a blonde lab, and Penny, like I said, was a penny-colored lab-ish. But
so you have all those dogs. So you got to know pretty much all the dogs that were going to the deployment. So
we had.
So how many dogs went with you? Like when you guys went overseas, how many handlers and dogs went with you?
There were 6 of us that went through the course. One of them, Staff Sergeant Hill, he was our kennel master, is what they basically dubbed him. So he was in charge of all of us. He didn't have a dog in country, but the rest of us had the dogs that we went through the school with. Santiago had Ratchet, who was borderline Great Dane looking dog, and Santiago's 0811, so he's a cannon cocker, throwing him in there. And big guy, big dog, made sense. Then we had Nail had Lydia, Eckert had B, O'Hare had Rocky. See here, Ratchet, Lydia, B, Freeze, and Penny. So that was all of us with those 5 dogs. But having been around the dogs throughout the school or the course or whatever you want to call it, we had a different. They matched us up with the dogs eventually, but we still ran all the different dogs to get a different feel for it, just because not just like as a human Marine, everyone's different, has their own personalities and all that stuff. So they tried to match it up as appropriate as possible, right. But we still had that like experience to be around them. So yeah, when we got to, I guess it would be Leatherneck, the big hub jump off point, didn't really know what we were going to be doing. Figured, 2 teams go here, 2 teams go here, wherever. And they basically told us, they're like, well, Belliston and Nail, John, you guys get to go with India. You guys are going to Kajaki. I'm like, that's all gibberish to me. I'm fucking right on. And as soon as we got there, as we're at Leatherneck doing the transition, because the dogs are really screwed up for, I don't know, a couple of days, sometimes more, just from the flight and getting over there, because you're on I don't know, whatever craft it was. It was big enough that the crew they were throwing like a Nerf football in there and back and forth, and it messed us up for first deployment for sure, because I'm like, everybody else flew over on a nice like commercial plane, and we're sitting in these like shitty little jump seats, and guys are laying on the ground and doing all this stuff, and it was definitely a shakeup for us. So for them too, it definitely I don't know, put a knot in their tail, if you will.
Yeah, it's a little adjustment. I mean,
so so Nail and I went up to Kajaki, and it's right on the Kajaki Dam. There's a big dam that's there. That's
the Helmand Province.
Helmand Province.
So for people that don't know, that was 2010 wasn't the place to be.
Not at all. Not at all. They had so we got there right after the big push that they had from the south from Marja and stuff like that. So they, like the infantry units, were basically pushing the Taliban up towards us. And our job was to just hold the flat and don't let them go anywhere near the dam. You take as much as you want, but like it's all basically we're trying to vacuum them in essentially. So it was very unique because we got there and it was all Royal Marines, commandos. So these guys look like fucking GQ. They're sitting around like outside in like a hacky sack circle, and they're like bumping a volleyball around, and you hear the and you're like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's IDF. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to be doing. And like I do, but like very gray when we first got there. It was just a huge not culture shock, but culture shock because it's literally two
not a culture shock, but a culture shock.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to describe it, I guess. But from one branch to one country to another country, these guys were, I mean, the best of the best. These guys were, I don't know, I've been about the same size since 8th grade, so it's like not much has changed for me. But seeing some of these guys, I'm like, you're a commando for a reason, Mister. Like you're on a cover of like GQ magazine type until they smile and stuff. Jokes. But so yeah,
fortunate.
So we ripped with them. They had been there since the beginning of the invasion, post 9/11 and all that stuff. And the FOB Zabrugi had been passed back and forth between them and the Taliban a few times. But then they had it pretty well locked down for the last little bit. And why they decided to go with an artillery unit who's filling a provisional infantry mission, I don't know, and not an actual infantry unit. Never know. So a very unique opportunity, one for India. Nothing against the rest of our battalion, but it was very, very different for the rest of them. We were like the only ones that actually, nothing against the other guys, they, missions and stuff like that and whatnot, but very different. Self-sustaining. We ended up getting howitzers that were flown in because it's an artillery battery. So most of these guys are cannon cockers. I mean, you've got 0811s, you've got, FDC, you've got everybody that's going through it. And we had 2 howitzers and we were able to call for fire in support of ourselves, which was super, super cool and productive for sure. We needed it. But having another, I guess, unique mission set is they had a couple of guys, again, not being infantry, there's snipers and, all that good stuff. Designated marksmen for the POG units, as they call us. But our designated marksmen were actually taught by a Marine Corps gunner how to use the 50. We had a bunch of 0811s that were taught how to use mortars. One of the guys that worked in the COC was actually certified on how to shoot the javelin. He got to shoot a couple of javelins in country, which was really cool. So very, very unique mission for us, but even more so as a Marine, where it's like, you probably would never have this opportunity. You probably will never have this again, like if you stay in or whatever. So it just worked out. Worked out for the best, I guess. But beautiful view, but just odd place to put a non-infantry unit. But
and so some interesting. I think we're gonna get, before we get to the meat and potatoes, we'll have our first break for whiskey.
Absolutely.
Sean's a huge beer guy. He's a beer guy. Works at Barley Hopsters in Delaware. Loves his beer. So we're gonna have. I don't think I've seen him drink whiskey before. It'll be fun. So we're gonna have our first featured whiskey. Got some good ones. I hope you like them. Both of these I supplied them. Like sometimes we have guests. We have the guests bring us in, but I knew you're a beer guy. When I said bring some beer, I'm thinking like a couple beers. Him and Chris, like, we have enough beer down here to match the food we had. So the first feature was Old Forester. It's a private barrel pick from our friends at Opa Grill and Tavern. Old Forester, we've highlighted them before, is owned by Brown Forman. It has been on the market continuously longer and for any other bourbon company that's out there, and is also the first bourbon that ever had exclusive sealed bottles. It was founded in 1870 by George Gavin Brown, the founder of Brown Forman. It received one of the 6 license authorizing law for production of whiskey for medicinal purposes during Prohibition. Love that. I always love hearing that.
Absolutely.
That's such a great, was a great thing. So Old Forester is produced at the Brown Forman Distillery in Shively, Kentucky, and at the Old Forester Distilling Company located in downtown Louisville, Kentucky on Whiskey Row. And if you've never been down there, you have to go check out Old Forester, one of the most beautiful distilleries I've been to. In 2019, Brown-Forman announced it would be enhancing their retail single barrel program, which we have a couple of in front of us. They used to have a 90 proof. They upped them up to 100. So there's all the old ones here at 94. I was sitting on that before. They went to the 100 here, which is really good. Everybody in bourbon kind of misses the 90. It's pretty funny. It was a good spot. And then they went to the Old Forester barrel strength. This one was one of the first barrel strengths into Ohio and was picked during COVID. And the name is, most people are going to remember, is that barrel effing Baskin. So from a famous Netflix special that was going on right at the time. So it's 127.2 proof. It's not age stated, and the mash bill is 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. So it's one of my favorites just because the name. It's one of those great names actually, and I'm not making it up. If you can see it, they actually did approve that. It's one of the greatest name approvals that we did. I still am shocked that they approved that. It's a great name and a great bourbon. So we'll give a little bit. You got a glass there. There's a big glass over there. Do you want to pour in that one? No, I'm kidding.
Oh no, I got some other stuff in there. That is good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But so 2010, you're in Helmand Province doing everything that you didn't think you'd be doing, right? Sounds about like the military, right?
Yeah, very much so. Fulfilling whatever you're told to do in a certain degree. Yeah, this is the bigger picture, but this is actually what you're going to be doing. You have a general idea, but it was very unique in doing all that. Definitely different than we thought. But
so then I'd say, like, we're going to jump to, I guess, where I think your life probably changed the most. October 5th, 2010.
Absolutely.
There's a post that's come out, but I'm gonna read something first, and then we're gonna get your perspective of it because obviously you were there. But Sean's unit was ambushed, a very significant ambush at the time. And I'll read something. And actually, one of the Marines that was with him was awarded the Navy Cross. And if you don't know, the Navy Cross is the second highest award for the Navy. It's only behind the Medal of Honor. The only other medal I think ahead of it is actually the Army.
I think
Service Cross is higher because I think of the establishment of when the Army came in. So it's a really big fucking deal. So and that was Christopher Ferris. Is that Frias? So I'm going to read what I pulled a citation to read, and I thought I had it on here, but I didn't. But the citation will come up here when we're done. But it's very, basically, you guys get ambushed, his unit along with your unit, by rocket propelled grenades, recoilless rifles. Everything goes to shit really quick. I think 7 Marines are wounded.
Initially, yeah.
Initially, you're one of the 4 that was seriously wounded to be evacuated. So I'll turn it over to you from that. But tell us, obviously Freeze is with you. What happened from your perspective?
I mean, honestly, it was the oddest of oddities. I don't know. I was up on a roof with another guy, Drew Myers, and initially just for him to, hey man, I got to take a piss. Can you come up here and watch the corner? Sure. So Freeze is down below doing Freeze things, basically sleeping because he's dog shit tired, literally. Go up there, comes up, does his piss, does all his stuff, and he's like, hey, I'm going to eat some chow. I'm like, okay, we'll eat some chow. I got it for a minute. And just as it slowly, started to do that weird timing change of light to I don't know, dark, I guess. I don't know. Like October, it was weird there because it's super hot during the day. You're sweating, and then at nighttime, it would get really cold. So it was just getting to that point where it would get, I don't know, it was hard to see. And as the initial volley had hit between us, and there was a giant tree that was in this compound that we were at doing patrol base operations. Just, I want to say going out and looking for a fight, but we were out there to keep that FLET and forward line of enemy troops back. And that was the hot zone, the green zone. So it was weird because the north of our FOB was located on like the south side of the Helmand, and everything south was green and everything north was like a fucking desert. I mean, it was what you expect Afghanistan to be, other than like you see like the mountains and stuff like that in movies and all that wild stuff. But it was the green zone. So that's pretty much the bread and butter of where they would hide. They had tunnel systems and wadis and all the stuff that they would use to go up and down. And back and forth, just kind of hiding amongst the locals, and a lot of the population that was there, just because it's so close to the Helmand were farmers. So a lot of the green zone was from growing crops and everything from corn to some of the biggest okra I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you would think they were almost like ears of corn. Some of the okra that you come across, but it was a very, very odd time for the strike happening and where it happened, and then just the follow on, because we were so not far away, but the path of having to go down to where we were at was so just riddled with IEDs, the tree lines, and you where you would think to go between is not where you're supposed to go between. So you had to make it harder for yourself. So that's one of the things of like I hate my feet being fucking wet, is because of, well, at least if you're standing in water and you're walking through water, chances are there's no explosives. So it was kind of like that. You deal with it, but for the bigger picture of things, it worked out. But yeah, it was just a very, very odd time. The transition as the whole thing unfolded, and then getting the QRF to come out. And once that went down, we had guys that were up on the peaks, observation posts basically, that were tucked up, because the fob was basically tucked up against a mountain, and then they would hike all the way up kind of where the LZ was, and then go all the way across the top, and they could see, whatever designated AO that they actually had, and could kind of observe the unit that's down there doing foot patrols and stuff like that. And they had machine guns and all that good stuff. 50, which we love the 50. Mark 19, all that good stuff. So they're sending volleys and all this stuff down and calling out stuff. The QRF basically books it and comes down to us because of how everything unfolded, and just sheer mayhem of an ambush is what it is. They knew we were there. We weren't really supposed to be there because we were already there the prior night. We went out on a night mission from the same area, and went a little bit further south, basically trying to catch guys planting IEDs or being out when they're not supposed to. And we caught some guys, and we got stuck for a minute and ended up calling in a JDAM and all this stuff. And some of these dirt clods that were literally falling down were like the size of my Kevlar, and just, all right, as soon as it comes, then you guys boot and scoot. And it came. So we went right back to that compound, which against all of the senior guys' recommendations, there's some guys that went through Iraq and stuff like that. There's a few guys that actually had like combat experience prior to the actual deployment. So it was kind of brushed under the rug, like, no, I know what I'm doing, and you guys, a guy neither here nor there. But so we were there. Shouldn't have been there if we weren't staying there. I guarantee that wouldn't have happened. But they had eyes on us, so they knew we were there. We just didn't know they were there because, again, using the tree lines and tunnel systems and all the stuff that they use, crafty, and all the technology that we have still slipped. But yeah, that's what started it. And
so how many times have you guys been on patrols before?
Oh, I couldn't even count.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot. And being a dog handler, we were used almost every patrol. So like my very first patrol that I went out on was like a conditioning patrol. And it's like, just get your feet wet and kind of know, and you're going out and it's not that far, and you come back, and again, you're shaking, because you're not shaking, but you're shaking, you're just nervous. And it's a real situation, real environment where you're not only in charge of just yourself, but other Marines. And us having that role of a dog handler was very, very crucial in that. Like, we're here for one reason only, and it's to make it so we don't get blown up. Basically, we find something, even the locals and stuff like that, doing that mission. So it was pretty apparent. The first couple were a little finicky. Freeze.
How did he take to it initially?
Fuck, man. The first couple of them, I was even having second doubts with it, because I'm trying to get him to search a certain area and he's not listening, and I'm having like serious problems handling him, but not problems that would result in like somebody else getting hurt or anything like that. It's just from the schoolhouse mindset of doing that. But some of the other guys were like, well, that one's an asshole. He doesn't listen very well. He does, but he would go out and kind of deviate and then go and find somewhere and he'd piss for a second. And he got that out of his system really quick. So the initial first couple of patrols were a little rough, but doing that and then the amount that we were doing ended up having to get a third dog team to come to us. And so that was O'Hara and Rocky ended up coming because one squad needs a dog, the other squad needs a dog. Well, I can only do so much. The dog can only work so much. It's not a machine, and we can kind of push through it. But a dog that's literally running up and down and doing all this, it wears on them. So we had to have the third team that ended up coming in. And previously to me, I guess, getting hurt, the other guy that I initially got there with, John Nail, his dog Lydia, she ended up laying on one and, took the ultimate, I don't know, sacrifice, if you will, because that's what she did, but she's just, doing her job. So again, in this sick mindset of being a handler, we love the dogs no matter what, but I'd much rather the dog lay on something or step on something than one of my guys or one of us. Like, that's just civilian, anybody, just, you're a dog. But being a dog guy, it's like very harsh for some people to actually hear that reality. But it just that's how it worked out. So he was kind of messed up for a little while. They sent him back to get another dog. Just couldn't find him. At the kennel, the main kennel at Leatherneck, they had a bunch of dogs that were there. Handlers had gotten hurt. Not dogs left behind by any means, but just handler, whatever reason.
Need a partner.
Right? Yep. So let's match it up. It's already here. It's already certified. And some of those dogs had, I think it was his dog, I think her name was Lily, that they tried to get her to go out, and she was, as soon as any type of contact, any type of gunfire, anything, just would melt down. And it's like crippling to see like a dog do that. Because even like grown ass men, you'd see guys and it's like, hey, get your shit together. Like, there's a bigger picture here. We need you here. And then kind of snap out of it. Some of the dogs just couldn't get out of that, going through traumatic events themselves.
Yeah, you don't blame them, because a lot
not
of
at all.
What they've
not
been,
at all.
There's like they've probably seen more than,
for sure, explosions and all that. And I think by the time the night before I had gotten hurt, when we had gotten stuck and having to call the JDAM in, I mean, we're literally laying on this berm, and at that point, it's like we're taking contact from a compound across the way, and Freeze was just like basically running up in front of us for a minute, and it's like trying to get him to come in this chaotic environment, and finally does, and it's just like you could tell at that moment. Obviously, wasn't with him that long afterwards in country. That it had taken its toll on him too. Just the amount of shit that we had been through and explosions and just how it was. I don't know. It affects them just like it affects us. So
yeah. So how did he? What was it like? So before we get into the incident, more about you getting wounded. He says he got hurt. I think that's great. Is a very, very nonchalant. Like I got hurt on Tuesday playing pickleball, but I think it's a little bit different. But the way he talks about it, but it's always interesting and not making light of it, but it's sincere things. But so when Freeze would go back in, did he like there was obviously working Freeze, and then there was like the Freeze that was would he ever put his guard down, or was he always
So we learned. Against, I guess, probably the time, not going to get in trouble, or anything for it, but it lightened up the longer we were there. The dogs have to sleep in a kennel, don't sleep with you. Certain rules: you don't play with the dog, you don't praise the dog, you don't do certain things. Excuse me. Like treat training, you don't give them snacks, you don't do all that shit. As time went on, we did, because it was just like, you're one of us, and even the sense of the dog having to go back to the kennel. And they called us the dog pound gang, the dog pound crew, whatever. So we had like a little shack basically that was on the fob. And Fob Zabrugi was a really nice fob. It was built by the Russians initially when they were, they used it as an R&R spot. So there was actually some buildings that were there, but most of the buildings were pretty disheveled. Yeah, so things lightened up a little bit as things went on with the dog's mentality, and kind of letting them get out together, and like we would let them play with each other, and just you know, you don't want to teach a dog to, you know, tug of war and shit, but you let them kind of do their thing a little bit, just a decompression for them just as much as you know, as it was for us, as important as it was, whether that's coming back and listening to music or just bullshitting with your boys, just whatever. That was kind of like our version of the dog getting their opportunity to be able to do that as well. So it lightened up the longer we were there, but you could tell the working mindset. As soon as you'd put the choke chain on the dog, he knew it was time to work, and they all knew that. And so that was like, oh shit. And like most of the time, like I know, bud, we're going back again. Like literally coming back, setting up a report, and then they're like, hey, we're going to turn and burn. We need somebody to go. And then like having like the hierarchy of things. It's like, well, I know you guys are tired because I'm tired, but I'll go. And then just doing that. And we did a pretty good job of like trying to keep it as even as possible, but I still feel not taking the brunt of it, but I was like in charge of these guys there. And again, John Nail was 10 years older than me. So he's 32 at the time. And I'm, you know, 21, turned 22 there, in charge of a guy, and just having that like respect and stuff like that. It was very humbling, but also it was kind of like an older brother figure where like, yes, I'm in charge of you, but I also respect what you have to say. And so as time went on, we kind of didn't have this like super structured where I outrank you and the, you know, like that type of stuff. It was very, what's going to be best for the mission? Okay, well, you go, Bell. Okay, well, you go now. You know, just that mutual respect. So it was, as time went on, things got a little bit easier or more, I don't know. We were used to it by that point. So after the first little bit, it was kind of a lull period because Ramadan was going on when we were there. And then as soon as Ramadan basically stopped is when shit hit the fan naturally, because, you know, they're not going out and doing stuff during the day. They're waiting until nighttime. And even then they're tired from doing Taliban things, I guess. I don't know, whatever. I don't know. Doing their stuff. Yeah. Bad guy stuff. But yeah, it was a weird time to be there, but it definitely got easier as it went on, just because we got a little bit more comfortable. So when the other teams would come, even like some of the combat replacements that we had from throughout and leading up to it, guys getting hurt and stuff like that, taking into account like what the Brits told us of like, hey, this is what you do. This is what you do. Listen to the people that have been here before, you know, kind of passing that knowledge along. And it makes it less likely of something happening if you just, I don't know, do as the people that have been there longer than you know, it's the easiest thing. Usually with like ripping with units and stuff like that, there's like a, you know, the changeover and whatnot of, hey, stay away from here. This is a hot, you know, and there's a lot of that was down, but it seems so long ago, even though it wasn't, that I kind of forget a lot of that stuff, but I'm sure it would come back in a heartbeat for most of us, just that questions that you would ask and things like that. So it was definitely a chill. It got more chill. It's a bad word for it, but we got a little bit more comfortable, I guess, in that environment and situation, and kind of adapting and just dealing with it. You'd rather go out as a team than send a squad out without a dog. And then the longer that time went on, from the initial like first couple of, I don't want to take Bell and that dog's an asshole, like just guys pointing and stuff like that, not in a bad way, but definitely flipped once they realized how important their role actually was or is. So
do you feel like Freeze was overworked? Like the dogs were over there? Do you think it was they'd been pushed too far? What's your?
I think it's a combination factor for all of us. I think we all were. The dog's only as good as the handler, and being able to pick up on certain signs and indications and things like that. You can only work a dog, like I said, so much. And I feel like at times there were, you know, hey, this is not safe to send us out here right now. And well, what the fuck do you want to do? And it's like, well, I don't want to send you guys out without a dog. I guess, all right, we'll go get a team and do the pre-patrol planning and all this stuff, and then back. And there was a mixture of at times being overworked, but we tried. We never got a break. So the rest of the way that our unit worked is like one squad would be QRF, one squad would be like watching the gates and stuff like that. I guess that would have been QRF guys too. But then another squad's up on one peak, and then another peak basically, and then one's actually doing like combat patrols. Well, we just did patrols the whole time as dog handlers, so I never got the opportunity to go up and see these peaks. And they're like, it's so beautiful up here. You get to look at this lake and all this.
We watched you move around. And you guys,
we get to see.
You guys should go faster. You guys,
it was very unique, and so that's what I remind guys. And they're like, oh yeah, you remember up on West? And I'm like, never made it up there, man. And they're like, oh, that's right. I was like, I've seen pictures, and you guys definitely helped out, but we were out and about every day, unless there was like there's a few times that things had gotten canceled just with weather and stuff like that, but nothing like pressing. There was always a team. There was always a patrol that was going out almost every day, just keeping that flat, presence patrols, letting them know that we're there. And again, the whole hearts and minds shit. So you're going up north, and it's like, oh well, this is the sick mentality of Marines, but it's like there's not really a whole lot that's going to go on if we go up there. Like we're just going to be going on a walk basically, and you get like the pop shots and stuff, and you got some, but some of it was so far away up north that, I mean, guys are shooting at you and you're shooting at guys back, but it's not like a southern, like the Green Zone-esque where rocketed and just mayhem. And so it was an odd situation for the dogs, for the team, for the Marines that were there. I think everybody just overworked. The COC guys, the guys that run all of the comms and doing all that stuff. And like right before we got there, the HIMARS, I don't remember what unit it was. I'm not throwing them under the bus, but they had a shot out and hit like a school or something like that. So every fire mission that you had to call in any type of support, air, any of that, you had to get it approved up through like the RCT, and forward, and basically had to come stateside and then go back, and then they're, oh yeah, you're good to go. And it's like, well, we've been here for a minute. Like it was just a weird time. So we were very fortunate to have self-supporting with the 2 howitzers that got flown in up there by Gila, which was awesome. And literally, I think
you sent a picture of that. That was it.
And that's just one of the overwhelming, like, it's just beautiful looking at it. And you're like, this is such a nice landscape. And you're like, and all this down here is just like bad to a certain degree. But it was very reassuring that we had like the howitzers and the Marines that were taught how to shoot mortars and just self-supporting, which was awesome. So thankfully we at least were afforded that. So that worked out. But
so I found the citation, and we'll get into when you got hurt, we'll call it, where you got significantly hurt, But this is a citation. It says the President of the United States of America takes pleasure in presenting the Navy Cross to Sergeant Christopher B. Farias, United States Marine Corps, for extraordinary heroism while serving as an assistant squad leader with 1st Battalion, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division Forward, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force Forward, Afghanistan on 5 October 2010 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. As Sergeant Farias' squad and another squad were preparing to depart their patrol bases on a night patrol in the hotly contested Kajaki region of the Helmand province, Taliban fighters unleashed an ambush of 73mm recoilless rifle fire that inflicted at least 7 Marine casualties, 4 requiring urgent medical attention. A heavy volume of small arms and machine gun fire then poured in on the Marines from 3 enemy positions. Despite suffering a concussion and neck and shoulder fragmentation wounds from the 73mm blast, Sergeant Farias exposed himself to the unrelenting barrage of enemy fire, climbing onto the roof of the patrol base to engage the enemy with his rifle and grenade launcher and direct suppressive fire from 2 machine guns onto the enemy positions. His unhesitating action allowed a reinforcing Marine squad to maneuver into the ambush compound, clear the kill zone, and transport the friendly casualties to a landing zone 400 meters away. Refusing to seek treatment for his own wounds, Sergeant Farias steadfastly held his position on the roof, providing protection for his fellow Marines until he and the last element safely evacuated the patrol base. By his decisive actions, bold initiative, and complete dedication to duty, Sergeant Farias reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service.
Absolutely.
So that's I always found that when you read those citations and talk to people there, it's the same story but a little bit different. So
sure.
Do you like look back at him and do you remember when it happened, his actions that they talk about, or were you? I mean, you obviously. Let's talk about your injury. So the ambush takes place. How quickly were you initially wounded?
That initial volley of getting hit, like the movie style of like ringing and all this, and just dusty and like looking down, and obviously like my hand had taken some significant injury, and I'm like, my leg had hurt really bad. I'm like, I think I broke my leg, and just not thinking about it because you're in shock. And laying up on the roof, didn't really know I don't know, the guys were down below, and I'm kind of just hectic after that point. Like it was kind of all, I don't want to say, there was so much going on that I can't pinpoint. There's certain things that I pinpoint out of it, and this is probably post after like getting morphine and all that stuff, but finally getting yanked off of the roof, Billy Branch and David Weibel, the only guys that Weibel's a big guy, being able to pull my little ass and yank me off of this roof basically, and realizing that it wasn't my leg that was broken. First thing that he does, sticks his knee right at my balls, and that's one of the things that sticks out. I'm like, dude, get off my dick. I was like, you're crushing my shit. Like, and he, okay, and like that look and whatnot, and like, no, like, dude, like I get my hands messed up, like, whatever, and just more focused on my hand than I was with my leg, and it was my femoral artery that got severed. I'm talking with Army medics, corpsmen, just medical professionals in general. You don't really have that long, minute and some change-ish if you're lucky. So it was very quick, and I was very fortunate to have Marines like them and the corpsmen. I mean, I can't, Doc Pepper, which oddly enough, his last name's Pepper, and what we call corpsmen docs.
Yeah.
So just doing what they were supposed to do, what we were trained to do.
And I did attach something to it because you brought him up, is he actually was wounded initially, and he was knocked unconscious when the first thing happened, and he was decorated for his action as well, but he was knocked unconscious, and just remembers people yelling for him, and he wasn't in the greatest shape either, but went and
it was
treated Marines like you and saved your life, which
absolutely.
is
the guys that I thought I was kind of like not low priority with how everything went. I just thought it was my hand and my leg was broke. I had blood and all this stuff and whatever. And that's underplaying it, I guess. But at the time, it was just like, okay, not a big deal. And then we had another guy who got hurt, had like a collapsed lung, and then one of the guys had there's just a lot that went on. And I just remember we had a combat camera that was attached to us, and all I can remember is just he had like nothing against him. It was just like these screams of just like pain and all this stuff, and it was so distracting for everybody else that's trying to work and do stuff, that guys were just like, get him to shut the fuck up and like calm him down and all this stuff. And again, I remember hearing this, but being as they kind of put all the casualties together to try to figure out, hey, medevac, we got to get these guys gone. It was just chaos, absolute chaos. And Marines just doing what Marines do, taking care of each other. And without the modern courses and classes and the leadership that we had that made us do these, things of, this is how you, make sure you put your tourniquet in an easily accessible place, self-aid, buddy aid, all that stuff, take care of yourself, and then don't use your own shit, use their shit first if you're taking care of them and doing stuff. And it was very, I don't know, successful clearly, because out of all of us that got hurt, thankfully none of us, passed from it, but it was pretty chaotic. I would say it's probably the most chaotic night of all of our whole deployment.
I would think so. That seems.
It was. I mean, for mine, clearly, that was the end of mine. I was done. But
yeah. But so you said, when did you realize how hurt you were? I mean, you said initially you obviously. Yeah, I've heard. We've had other guests on, another Marine who, was stepped on IED and was very aware of what was going on. Like, when did you? At some point, you see other people hurt. You think they're worse than you. When did you realize, like, holy cow, I'm not doing so well?
I don't think that ever really sat in. I have like a few small things that I remember. Again, post, drugged up, calm down, you're good, you're going to be okay, and all that stuff. And I remember sitting there and, why is somebody always fucking here with me? Like, I didn't put two and two together until after I'd come back and I had, time to reflect in the hospital, and just like, that was pretty important that they were there doing that. And it was pretty bad, if hindsight, not just a broken leg, as I think the initial call up, like, oh, Belliston's hand's fucked up, got a broken leg, and kind of just trickled down, because I had my old roommate was up at headquarters, so he was at Fiddler's Green, a different part, but where our main headquarters was, so everything would go up through them, through the pipeline. They just initially thought that I had a broken leg and my hand was messed up. Didn't kind of bat an eye, oh, he'll be fine, that type of stuff. Even when, like, my mom had gotten the call, that late night call that nobody wants. They had told her, again, just the message passed down the line of, oh, his leg's broken and his hand's a little jacked up. A little bit more than that.
That's not the whole truth.
So it was just very abbreviated, and again, very, very concise, and they don't want to go into detail and all that stuff, and sensitive information, and you don't want to upset people and whatnot. But that kind of just continued on down, and then, like, I think it really sat in for me once I woke up in Germany. Yeah. So, like, I remember getting on the bird. I remember actually being carried by one of the guys, True, and he's literally carrying me and, like, running me to the bird, and he trips and falls, I shit you not, and drops me. I'm not even kidding you. He drops me, and he's like, oh, I'm so fucking sorry. And I'm just like, get me on the fucking bird. I don't know, like, just playing it down. But, like,
I only weigh 120 pounds.
I'll carry him. I can carry his little ass, no problem. Like, it. I remember all the way up to getting to Leatherneck initially, where they did, the initial life-saving surgeries and stuff like that. I just remember the Brits were the only ones that would come and pick us up. Marines were like, it's too hot. We're not gonna waste a bird, but we can't. And the Brits were like, we've been there. We'll fucking go and get them. And they literally came and got us. And I just remember these guys on the bird, like, yelling at me, oi, fucking oi. And it's like, I can't, it's hard to hear already, and I'm kind of out of it, but, like, it's really hard to understand you, and, like, how everything was going down. And literally, like, I remember getting, like, carried off of the bird, and it was like this, like, crowd surfing moment, and there's all these people and all this shit, and then woke up in Germany. It's like, that was lights out to a certain degree, but still didn't even think it was that bad until I woke up, and I'm like, it is deathly quiet. And this is so strange, coming from, like, the most chaotic moment of my life to a point where you're at the best place that you could possibly be. And it was just very, like, snap to, like, where's so-and-so? And I remember freaking out, like, where's Segura? Because Segura was another guy that was hurt with us, and was, from what I understood, was bad and was way worse than me, but it didn't turn out. I mean, don't get me wrong, it just, the way that things went down. And so that was, like, my anchor moment where I'm like, where's Segura? Where's Segura? Where's Segura? And where's Freeze? Where's, just, like, going through those, like, moments. And that's where it slowly, like,
back to Freeze. So what happened at that point? Like, was he hurt at all during the? So
he was down below the initial volleys that took place. It hit the top of the roof, and then down below, he was basically laying there and was, like, trying to get away. So they're trying to calm him down and keep him controlled while I'm not able to. And I don't quite remember all of that. I just remember afterwards and stories and stuff like that from some of the guys that were there. I don't remember who walked him back to the fob, but after they got everything squared away and got us sent off, they had a non-dog handler has to walk a dog who doesn't like to listen to other people already. let alone like, I don't know. It was very strange, but he made it back to the fob. Nail still didn't have a dog that was working with him at the time. So Nail tried to work him a couple of times and he wouldn't work for him. He just refused, just attitude and fuck you. You know, that you're not my dad. That's what we kind of call us in that sense, even though still the outranking thing. And that goes into the whole, they're always a rank above you. So you remember to show them respect and not just treat them like a dog where, you know, people are used to fucking doing dogs and all that stuff. But yeah, so he worked, or attempted to get worked by Nail for a little bit. And then, ended up coming back stateside after our unit left. He went through another class, got matched up with another guy because they spent all this money on a dog. They're like, we're not going to waste him. Maybe he just has to find the right fit. Flying colors, going through the course, the research, all that stuff. As soon as he got to country, it was like he knew. And just from the contractors, like the civilian guys, were like, yeah, as soon as he came back, he just knew, like, oh fuck, like not being the same to a certain degree. So,
I think, I mean, he's a Marine. Like he's like the same as I think.
He did like a couple of patrols and stuff like that afterwards, but it was just not. It was more of a liability, I feel, with a dog that if it's not going to listen to you and it's going to run off, it's not worth it to have you out here handling this unsafe tool, if you will. But so yeah, he did that, and then they basically sent him back to the States, and he was basically in a kennel. And
there's a good story for that. We'll get to that with it's a good story. There's a good story here. Like,
absolutely.
So I initially,
that's a bad descriptor.
Well, I heard, the funny thing, the interesting about your coming in is I heard that during that ambush that your dog was killed. So like last night I was preparing for the podcast. I'm thinking, holy Christ, when he tells me the story, I'm going to like lose it. And then so today I wasn't sure, but I wanted to know. So I remember earlier I texted Sean, I was like, did Freeze make it? And when he told me yes, I was like, oh, thank God. It's like, because I figured that this is going to be it would have been the worst. Because I even told my wife last night, I was like, I think Freeze died. Like I don't know how I'm going to handle this. So it's a good story with Freeze. Like I think it's a good story. But let's talk about you, because there's some stuff I want to talk about with being wounded. There was 4 of you that were seriously wounded. We had another fellow Marine that was wounded, was sent to California, I think, like you were. Were you with the guys that you were wounded with, or were you guys separated after you got to Bethesda?
So
what happened? Because I was shocked the last time we talked to people, like how you're with these Marines or soldiers, but all of a sudden you're wounded. It's really wounded, and then next thing you know, you're within a couple weeks you're by yourself.
It was I was again sinking into it, and the amount of like surgeries and stuff having to go through. I initially, we were at National Naval Medical Center, which is now Walter Reed. Did all that.
It was Walter Reed, right?
So now, at the time, it was just the Naval Medical Center, and then Walter Reed was separate. That was more for I don't want to say amputees, but more focused on amputees, and that's Army, Marine, like that's just anybody that goes through. The medical center was more reserved for internal, some external, but more eyes on. I don't want to discredit by any means, but just I don't know how I kind of got roped into staying there again, being classed as an amputee and all that stuff, not like a double or a triple. Because some of the guys that had gotten hurt previously ended up going to Walter Reed, so we were there at the same time, but different points of recovery. So they try to get you as closest to 100% as they possibly can get you at that moment, and then eventually you get sent back to your unit. Is what basically happened to me, to all of us. Some of them ended up staying. So I ended up going back. I came home. I was home on convalescent leave for a while. It was like 40 days or something like that, because we still had another month of deployment. So our unit was still there, still doing stuff. Guys were still getting hurt and doing all that. Finally, once they came back, I came home. I was here being treated at the VA as military, which was a super strange experience too. Just being active duty, being treated at the VA. Ohio State, just kind of had the pick of the litter to a certain degree. So got back to 11th Marines at Pendleton. I had to have more surgeries, and I didn't want a different surgeon. Basically, it's like your mechanic. Your mechanic knows your car type deal. It's like, I want the guy that opened me up to know, like, to continue on the follow-on surgeries and stuff like that. And I built a relationship up with Dr. Howard, Commander Howard, Dr. Howard, which for the longest time, this just goes to show like how kind of fucked up you are drug wise and just la la land, so many people coming and going and all that. I just thought he was a doctor, and it was like, oh, hey doc. It's like, he's a commander, like in the Navy, and you're like, oh, that's pretty hindsight, just very casual conversations like you would have with your regular doctor and stuff. But I wanted him to do my follow-on surgery. So my unit, it was kind of a pain in the ass. They had no problem. My unit was great with whatever you need. I mean, I was pretty much able to do whatever the fuck I wanted when I came back. And you just let us know whatever appointments you got, whatever. Like, I had a hard time shaving because I'm learning to do everything with my left hand, even though I was kind of ambidextrous before, but I never shaved my face before with my left hand. So I would get shit and stuff like that. And they're like, okay, maybe it's a better fit if you go to the Wounded Warrior Regiment West. Like, so Wounded Warrior, they've got East Coast, West Coast, and they're small chapters here and there, like one at Bethesda. There's one for like the burn guys and stuff like that. In Texas, I cannot think of the hospital.
Yeah, it's at San Antonio.
Yeah, so it's like, more oriented towards like burn guys and stuff like that.
That's not, is it Shipler? No, I can't remember.
I do not. We didn't have anybody that ended up going there, but yeah. So tooth and nail, my unit basically sent me to Wounded Warrior, and then Wounded Warrior, I had to petition and do all this shit to basically get back to DC, and they really weren't sending guys back to DC because that was such a pipeline for guys that were in country. Bed space was a huge issue. And again, you got guys that were doubled up in rooms, tripled up in rooms and stuff like that, just dealing with things like that. My dad, I remember a story. I was in my room, and this guy gets wheeled in, and just talking to him and just bullshitting. And he had, like, the little curtain in between us, and people would come in, and there's a few times where they wheeled me out. And I'm like, fuck, why do I have to leave? Like, I was here first, like, just being how it is. Dude was a Navy SEAL who had taken some stuff, and then they ended up giving him his own room and doing all that. And so they kind of, again, bed space was a huge issue. So they didn't really want to send guys back. So I got to go back as an outpatient recovery and doing all that. And then they spent all the money doing huge renovations at I guess they knew it, foresight, I guess, that Walter Reed was eventually they're going to close the one and combine the two. So they did this huge buildings, adaptable like rooms and stuff. So for like caregivers, like parents and spouses and stuff like that, they're there trying to take care of their loved one. It made it so there was a room for them and like a living quarter. So it was like a suitable, not just a hospital-esque environment. So it worked out well. I got to stay in the Navy barracks because I was walking at the time and doing all that, which still was lights out compared to Marine Corps barracks. But it was a unique situation for me.
That's the only time you're glad to be part of the Department of the Navy at the time?
Absolutely. I'll never shit on the Navy by any means because, like I said, without the Navy, I wouldn't be here. Without Pepper and Collins and all those guys. I mean, those guys are lights out. So I'll talk shit, but I won't let anybody else shit on them. So
yeah, so like people that don't know, I don't think people know there are, but don't. So what he's talking about is even in all the medical people that are attached to the Marines are actually Department of the Navy. They're called corpsmen, so they're not Marines. They're Navy.
Might as well be.
They are. They're embedded with them. They wear the same uniforms. They do the same things, but they're actually their docs are actually corpsmen. It's unique to.
It's very. Unfortunately, if you're a green side corpsman, which green side you're attached to Marines, blue side you're like hospital-esque. If you're green side and you're attached to a Marine unit, you're basically a Marine. I mean, you're getting your balls busted. Those guys, where's your haircut? Well, our regulations are this. I don't give a fuck. And I remember guys getting their ass chewed. It's like, I don't know what to tell you, doc. Like, that's just the way that it is. Just going about it and dealing with things. But yeah, very, very important for sure. The Navy in general.
So number of surgeries from October 5th to today.
Between surgeries and washouts, close to 40. So just going through, and my hand, my leg, I had still have some serious nerve damage and problems with my right side. Go figure. The side that took the blast, essentially. But yeah, it was. I don't know. It just seemed like it was routine. I don't know. You would go through, and they come through, and just like in the civilian world, where they're like, "This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna replace your," and you're, okay, and you're like, just acknowledge, like, I don't care, just fix me, man. Like, I just want to get back. I just want to be with my guys and do what I'm supposed to do. Whatever you can do to make me get back, because they were still gone, like initially, through all that, through the height of it seemed like it was every other day that you're doing stuff, and the amount of anesthesia and all this crazy just wildness that was going on at the time of just being in La La Land. And my mom and my dad were there. My grandparents came from out west, and gave my parents a break because I was there 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I think is what it was. Just couldn't imagine it from their perspective of staying in like the base hotel and then having to get up every morning and go. And then like my mom did a really good job of being there and just, what is this? What is this? Like, no, he's saying yes, but he's not saying yes. Like, he's here, but he's not here. If that
like
makes
you're
sense.
like an advocate for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And paperwork and helping me fill stuff out. And the Marines were awesome too. The detachment that was there. Some of them were active duty, and some of them were reservists that were like activated basically. And so all mixture. You had admin guys, like our first sergeant, oddly enough, First Sergeant Barrett was his name. He was in military police, and Purple Heart guy as well. He'd gotten hurt, so he kind of been through this motion before, and now he's in a leadership role where he's like, okay, I can advocate for you. And him and I kind of butt heads initially, because I got back and I'm getting my balls busted about like, oh, hey, maybe you should shave. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen, as I'm like in this cone and like I can't move. I'm having someone wipe my ass and having my dad hold a piss jug for me and like
just shave. I'm not shaving.
And that's that. Get a haircut. It'll make you feel so much better. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, no, what are you going to do? Like, that's kind of what it was. And again, that's just that arrogant, like, fuck you. You haven't been there. But once you connect with somebody who's kind of been through it, it was a nice, like, bridging of the gaps where it's like, okay, you do know. You've been here before. So, yeah.
So you're trying to get yourself better. You're having all these surgeries. You're kind of unique on a lot of other people in the fact that you're worried about fellow Marines that were wounded with you that night. Also, the Marines are sober, and then also you have to have freeze in your mind, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, what is like? Are you like who are you most worried about? Like at that time, is your you're focused on yourself, but are you worried most about freeze? Or are you worried about
I was worried about everybody. Do not get me wrong, but my guys, the other dog teams, because I was in charge of them in that sense of like, they're my responsibility. I'm the one that doing reports. How is this going to fall down? Like, who's going to step up and have to do this? And just a million things going through your mind. It was a bit of both, but also like once I found out that freeze was okay, it was like, okay, Nail's trying to work and that'll work out. Now I can kind of focus on myself, and they're coming back. Initially, once they finally got back, and I think once I got out of the hospital, that kind of like de-escalated a little bit, where it was like, okay, I don't have to worry as much. But now, not knowing the internal struggle of guys, and not only going through it, but the guys that were there that didn't physically get hurt, but hurt with that, I don't know, seeing their brother go through all that. It still is always there. It's still to this day. I mean, it's one of those things you worry about. You'll see I'll hear a random song or something like that, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how he's doing. Like, it's just like a memory jog where I hope he's doing well, like on a good side of it. But at the time, it was more, once I found out he was okay, I was good, and that they were good, and that they were all coming home. I'm like, okay, well, it's not our fucking problem anymore. It's unfortunately now it falls to the next guys. So it's important for them to do the transition with them to educate the next group of handlers that are coming through to, I don't know, prepare them better than we were prepared. Not saying the Brits didn't, they just we didn't have that like one-on-one relationship where it was, don't do this, avoid this, whatnot. So definitely dropped off towards the end, but still there, I guess. But.
So you have all the surgeries. You're still in Marine Corps. You're in DC. Like, what was your goal at that time? Was it to get back to become a Fleet Marine, or were you still like? I mean, did it ever hit you at the point like, oh shit, I'm not gonna be able to be a Marine anymore? When did that ever happen, or did they just say, hey, by the way, you're not going back, Sean? How did that work?
I feel like you're in such a sensitive spot at that time that they don't want to discourage anybody. So they're, kind of not pumping you up, but you're in a very vulnerable position. So they're just like, okay, don't fucking make him go down this road or whatever. I remember having a conversation with the commandant at the time, General Conway, and he like came in actually. So our group was like the last guys that got a like Purple Heart ceremony before he transitioned as the commandant. I think it's General Amos. He's like, what can I do? And I'm like, I just want to stay in. I'd like to be a dog handler. And he's like, oh, okay. Kind of blowing smoke up your ass, but not really. He's doing his face job type stuff. And then the aide comes up and, some captain or whatever. And he's okay, let's get your information. And then it's also like, that's not going to happen. Like, but a nice way of saying things. And it's okay, can I go back to my unit at least? I'm going to get better, and I'm still going to, there are options for me to do that. So I still had that mentality where it was like, I want to at least stay in and figure things out. If I can stay in, the only way I'm staying in is as a dog handler. And the longer that I was there, I think for a lot of us that were there in country, especially not re-enlisting and being on that fence, I'm not saying as shit got real, but as things progressed throughout the deployment, it definitely dwindled with my, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, not when the real is the real, but also like it's kind of taxing. And I was a single guy at the time. Unfortunately, I only had my parents to worry about me. So I didn't really think about it in the sense of like Nail was married, Eckert was married. I didn't not have anything to go home to, but it was more important for them to get call time or, do something like that. So I don't know. It definitely, it was not worded to me in the right way, but also I made the best decision because after I had gotten close to separating and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to get the fuck out. Whatever I can do to get out. You got me to the point I'm the best I'm going to be. And it's not where I would like to be and be in the Marine Corps. They're like, you could stay in the Marine Corps, but you'd probably have to go do a different job. And it's like what? It's not really a whole lot for a guy to do. And it's like, I'm not going to fucking sit behind a desk. Like, if that's what you want me to do, I'm like, if there's something in the dog handling world, yes. And they're like, well, it's not an MOS. The only way you can be a dog handler as an MOS is to be military police. And that's not going to happen. So it's kind of like I can't, my mind having like, oh, I'll just be like an advisor and like kind of give my, my experience and educate some of the guys that are getting ready to go through all this. And maybe that'll help. And they're like, yeah, it's not really okay. Like just kind of blowing smoke. But yeah, it did sink in. And finally it was like, I'm done. Ready to get out. Next chapter. Absolutely.
Which is important. So 2012, you retire, medically retire. Mm-hmm. Come back to Ohio.
Yep.
So before we get into that, because there's some good stories. This is where Freeze comes back in, right?
Absolutely.
Soon. So we'll hit our quick featured whiskey. Are you ready for some more? He drinks beer a lot faster. Sean drinks beer faster than he drinks whiskey.
I'm a little guy.
But we're gonna feature the second one. We'll do really fast because I thought this was going to be a long one, and it's always interesting that we're gonna press on, but we'll be quick because I want to get back to what I think is an important story. But the second featured whiskey is we're gonna go with a Knob Creek barrel pick from Papa Joe's in Indiana. We've talked about Jim Beam a lot. Huge sponsors and not sponsors, but huge friends of Pours with Patriots. But we talked about Jim Beam is located in Claremont, Kentucky. Jim Beam produces probably some of the most prominent names of bourbon in the world. Since 1795, they have 7 generations of the Beam family have been involved in the whiskey production from the distillery. The brand became Jim Beam in 1943 in honor of James B. Beam, who rebuilt the business after Prohibition. Fred No and Freddie No are the current master distillers, but Fred took over in 2007 and became the 7th, and his son Freddie became the 8th generation Beam family distiller. The distillery and Jim Beam brand was actually purchased by Suntory in 2014. In 1992, the 6th generation Beam master distiller, Booker No, created Knob Creek Bourbon. And if you don't know Knob Creek, then I feel sorry for you. But to restore the standards of Prohibition-style whiskey, pushing the boundaries of the entire category with the introduction of super premium small batch bourbon. And then 2010, they came out with the single barrel program, and this is one of the greatest things ever came out. It was the 14 and 15, 16-year-old Knob Creek single barrels. These are phenomenal. The Papa Joe's, like I said, is all Knob Creek bourbons are 120 proof. This one is actually 14 and a half years old. Its mash bill is 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. The best bang for the buck, I think, of any bourbon that's ever been created. So, are you ready for a quick
I am.
Cool.
I actually had a quick trip, mini bourbon trail that we did. My dad, a buddy of his, and a buddy of mine, actually. So we got to go to Jim Beam.
I'll get you for bro.
Oh, that's good. Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam, and we were attempting to go down to, I think it was Four Roses.
Yep.
That was right down the way. We didn't make it down there, because we ended up drinking too much, but it's kind of what you do on those things.
Four Roses is great.
It was very, I don't know, it was a cool experience to be able to see Jim Beam. If you've never been, I would definitely go. A buddy of mine I grew up with, who actually was Army. He's a motor T guy. Iraq, Afghanistan twice. He joined after me. Just weird how it linked up. He moved back to Ohio after he got out and went down there. And all I can remember from that trip that like stands out was he wanted to see that barrel, that Mila Kunis from the commercial.
Yeah, okay.
He's obsessed with. He's like, "Where's the fucking barrel that Mila Kunis was all over?" He's like, "I want to see this one." And so it was super cool.
They're probably like, "That barrel's not here, buddy."
We were like one of the last groups, so it was literally just us 4, and then there was one couple, and they were like an older couple that were with us and our tour guide. And not knowing much, I knew a lot about beer and stuff like that. Going through it and doing all this, and it was insane how it happened. And as they're like filling the barrels up, and it's coming out like the white lightning and stuff, and the guy, I can't remember his name, but he goes and he, like, in my mind, I think that it's like a gas pump almost, but he like pulls it out, and then it's like clear, and you're like, okay. And this guy just goes, he's like, "Oh, that's good stuff." And he's like, go ahead. And so everybody goes around and does it. And I remember going up to, I'm like, "Oh," and he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's that good stuff." And I'm like, yeah. Like, just, it took my breath away. And my dad's laughing, and his buddy Phil's laughing. And I'm just like, oh man, this is a
yeah. Anybody that tells you that White Dog is good,
White Dog, White Dog.
It's I mean, it's good for, like you said, a couple of things. The thing, but yeah, like if you're drinking White Dog, I
saw him do it. And I'm like, all right. And so everyone else was like
some
super
people have
timid.
some good White Dog. They have some that drink up, but again, why not let it age a little bit and just,
Sure.
But yeah, you are right, Sean. Knob Creek or the Beam Distillery is unbelievable. They have a new restaurant there. You definitely have to check it out. You have to go to any distillery if you're into whiskey. Just hit them all. They're all great. They all have different personalities. They have different products. They're all fun. It's
Buffalo Trace was awesome too. Again, it was, I mean, just like going to a brewery. There's so many people there that are, into this and getting some of the history behind it, and like the purity laws, and this can only be classified as this because it's within this radius, and it's, same with beer, some of them, and like purity laws and whatnot. But it was nice getting a little insight being down there.
Yeah, they're great. Like I would
really
say,
good.
like everywhere you go, I've been fortunate enough. It's my I don't know, my hobby, my obsession, my passion. But it's always great because they're all different. There's so many things. It's great that you have a memory. And I didn't even know that you went to Knob Creek. So it's always funny that you pick something. That's what's crazy about this podcast is you just do something. You're like, I didn't even talk to him about the Knob Creek and have a connection. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We all did like the bottle where you get to put your thumbprint on it. And it was so, again, making a bad joke as we're doing it. And the guy's like, okay, doing it. And he goes, go ahead and put your thumb in there. And I was like, and I put my hand up. I'm like, and then my dad just starts laughing.
Like, is that a joke?
And the guy felt super uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. It's okay. You can laugh. And kind of chuckled and was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you made me feel super uncomfortable, man. But no, it was a good experience.
So we'll get into post-military. You come back to Ohio. Mm-hmm. I asked you a little bit, like, it's always fun to talk to you. So you gave college a little bit of a whirl.
I did.
And if you've been tuning in a couple hours ago, it wasn't his thing. So it didn't work out like you thought it would again, which is all right, right?
And so right when I got out, I looked at going to like Arizona State. I looked at going to Texas A&M, did all this stuff. And I'm like, I just want to be closer to home. Worked out that way. My best friend, the guy, again, 6-7 months ahead of me, ended up getting out, crushed through OU. So by the time I transitioned, because he had just gotten back from Afghanistan right before I left. So when I was at the dog handling course, him and a couple of his buddies came up from Lejeune, stayed with me at the hotel. They were ahead of me. So he was basically on his way out, crushed through OU. I settled on OU. Basically, they were all leaving, and I didn't want to be down there anymore because I'm like, I know some of these other guys that I've met through, at the time it was the Combat Veterans Club. And then OU made us change it because there was a bunch of people that were offended or felt alienated because they were veterans, but they weren't combat veterans. So they felt like they got shit on, which they definitely did, because as military does, we just give each other a little bit of hard.
They felt like they were getting shit on, but they were getting shit on.
And so like that was like an unbeknownst thing to me. And I think they're like, my buddy Dev was the president of it. And he took it over from a guy who's actually with a Lima company, Mike Logue, who was there with, through all their Iraq deployment, and got to meet some really cool people down there, some bonds. Straley is the guy with Lima, Mike Straley, who does the Eyes of Freedom, like the traveling memorial for the Lima guys.
Yeah, we've talked about Lima. The Lima Marines from Ohio took a huge hit, and we've had some people on before, so they're pretty well known in Ohio, especially to
for sure
Marines that were that are from Ohio. So it's crazy.
That was a small world of just getting to meet people and just going through there, but just realized it wasn't for me. Moved back home actually to my parents' place. So I guess I'm just going to transfer to OSU. So I did OSU for a little bit, and the more that I was there, the more I realized that the skill set that I already had and the mindset I already had was not being improved by me being here in school. And I don't know, initially my thought was I was going to get out and get a business degree and start my own business, and always being a craft beer guy towards the last little bit of my enlistment and stuff. I wanted to be a brewer for a long time, and I was like, man, I'm going to start a brewery. Like everybody has that. Yeah. Just because you have a business degree doesn't mean you qualify or doesn't qualify. It's a completely different aspect. And I realized, what am I doing here? I'm not wasting time, because it was time that I earned, that we all earned, stuff like that for the GI Bill and whatnot. I just couldn't pin it down. So worked out of my dad was basically not coached me, but volunteered me. You need to go and do something more than go to school and then come home, because I was really productive in doing stuff at home at their place. Like he'd come home, he goes, the fucking yard's all mowed, all this shit's done, and as best that I can do it. But again, I'm able to drink beer and do whatever. Like it was weird time, but
it was a transition for you to get out. I mean,
for sure,
there was still some times.
It took years, and still I feel like each and every day getting better. It's getting better. It's getting more normal. And again, it's hard to think that it's 2023, 13 years ago that this happened. That's a long time. It's way longer than I was in the Marine Corps. It's like that's a weird, I don't know, the stages of life type deal, but it was much needed to push me towards Barley Hopsters, where I still work and stuff like that.
That's why I met you, and you have a passion for beer, just
absolutely.
have the passion for whiskey, and it's a great place if you're not there. Owned by an old friend, Dylan. Now he just took over it, some change of management. But if you're up there and you want to get your beer on and talk to some people that are crazy about beer like we are about whiskey.
Absolutely. It's not a pretentious place. Like I know some of the beer places get that like pinkies up. That's not us at all. If you want Miller Lite, I guess no Miller Lite, we don't have that. But if you want a Mickey's, which we all love so much, so
but it's also a place where you can like get brewing products. It's
Absolutely.
a great place. So just to hang out, and what's cool is where I've been fortunate enough to meet you, and then Chris is over there sitting there. Some other Marines that are there that we'll have on later in the year. So let's talk about it. So barley hops. I think the next story that everyone's on, like I want to know about is like, so we fast forward a couple years and we got to talk about freeze again.
So when I was at OU, I guess, not to interrupt you, but I guess
I'm just trying to.
So when I came back, I got out in October of 2012. I had to drive back from OU because I was actively as a student, just as like it had started, to go back, get my DD 214 and do all that. And the pipeline came down where it's like, hey, we got freeze, we know where he is, like everything is good. You got him. And I'm like, what do I have to do? Tell me where to be and when, like, just how it worked out. So I went, got my DD 214, rolled in there, had longish hair, longer, had a little scruffy beard. I was like, I'm not shaving, fuck that. Like I'm still in, but I'm not out because I didn't get my actual, DD 214 yet. Then went down. So back to the companies, the role had transitioned to the other company who had been awarded the contract. So he was basically at the kennel of the new place, AK9I, I think is what it was. Nobody knew, that was the hardest thing, was doing the legwork to figure out where he was. And he was just there. And they're like, oh, he's labeled one of these non-deployable dogs. He's just here in a kennel and going to bide his time. Maybe he'll get adopted, or I honestly don't even know what the process is for that at the time. But yeah, so I got to go down and get him at the same time. So that would have been like end of October, November.
Yeah, but you said somebody helped you with that. We talked about that. It wasn't like
a gentleman by the name of Cale Weston. He worked with Marines in Iraq. He worked for the State Department. So I just was fortunate enough I was able to speak and able to carry myself in a more mature aspect. So I got volunteered and asked to do certain events, like speaking engagements and stuff like that. Being in DC, they're like, well, if you're here, we're going to at least use you as like going and talking to like E8 and E9 seminars, the young lieutenants that were coming through at Quantico, because Bethesda is not too far from Quantico. So going down, doing that. But this just happened to be one of the random dinners, and sat next to this gentleman. And yeah, he, again, one of those questions that they always ask, what can we do for you and all this shit? And I really just want my dog. And I remember that's what I had told him. I was like, I just want my fucking dog. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, blowing smoke up my ass. The next day, there was a car that was basically sent for me, unbeknownst to me, to go and have lunch with him. And he literally had notepads and his computer and sitting in this little pub, DuPont Circle. And he's like, all right, let's bust this out. Drawing up documentation basically for the beginning of the process, because there was no actual process. There was a few handlers that had actually got, I guess the dogs were adopted, but they were given to like the parents of like a handler who was killed. There was I can't think of his name right now. A guy from Texas, his parents, they basically the Marine Corps gave his dog to his parents. They lost, not saying that in replacement, but like as here you go. So there was really no like paperwork. There was nothing like that. And we started that in 2010. This was 2011. It was a year. It was almost 2 years for me before I ended up getting freeze back. So it was a little over, but the legwork that was done. One of my junior guys, O'Hara, ended up getting to adopt his dog too. And it took him, I think it was like 3 weeks. It was basically just for the dog to recover from being neutered, because the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps. And they neuter all the dogs before. I remember they were like, well, he has to get neutered, talking about freeze. And like, I don't want that. They're like, no, you don't have a choice. If you want him,
we can't put that Marine out into the world.
And so in my mindset, I'm like, it's going to kill the dog's drive. It's going to make him be like,
we're going to allow that Marine to adjust.
And being an older dog, I was like, I just didn't want it to like affect him. But the Marine Corps policy is the Marine Corps policy. And then the way that it was worded to me was like, they don't want you out there like breeding.
Yeah.
They don't want you to breed this hundreds of thousands of dollars that we pumped into this dog. And then you just go.
Yeah, but I think, but your guys' mind, it's the least thing. I think
that was
like
not.
You said, and I don't blame the government for doing it on the Marine Corps, but I think you're just more of, like you said, is you don't want it to change who he is, right? You want him to be who he was, and
personality wise, because even like some of like we had a lab growing up, Layla, and then when she finally my parents got her spayed because I had left for the Marine Corps, and my mom's like, I'm tired of dealing with this dog and diapers and all this stuff. And as soon as she got spayed, she went and she just got big and just lazy and just completely changed her whole personality. And I was afraid that was going to happen with him, but it didn't. He was very chill when he came back. So yeah, I got him, would have been, November, end of October, November, right as I got out. So I had him down at OU, was in an apartment because I was too old.
So what was it? What was his reaction or your reaction when you saw him? Did he recognize you right away, or was it still?
So it's not this.
Did you start crying? Was it like I'm picturing like the movies, like the dog comes running to you, like what was that like? What was that reintroduction of your friendship? Because you said something in the text that he was your best friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it was pretty. Wasn't that Hollywood moment that you?
Yeah, no, I know.
So when I got, and again, that's
he didn't walk up and pee on you like
no. He knew better than that. But then
that would have been a great moment though. Wouldn't it have been like?
I would have taken that from how I handled seeing him, because I went to the kennel and stuff like that, and I showed up and they were kind of oblivious that I was even coming, and I'm like, I've got this stack of papers. Where's my fucking dog at? And hold on, let me get so and so. And then so they got this guy, and he's like, I'll take you out, and then go to the kennel, and he's literally in a kennel, and they let him out, and I'm looking at this dog, and I'm like, that's not my fucking dog. He's so skinny. So skinny, and I'm like, not in a like malnourished way. They were like, yeah, he was borderline on the cusp of having to get forced like IV like fluids and stuff like that. I'm like, when did this happen? Well, it's been like this since he got neutered. And I'm like, how do you think anybody else would react if you cut their balls off? Like they'd probably stop eating too. Like, I mean, being this dog his personality was so alpha and so top tier.
He's like, the fucking Marine Corps screwed me. They took my balls.
As literally as he comes up to me, Gal hands me the leash, and I'm looking at him, and the first thing I did, grab his left ear because they've got their social security number, basically, is what we call it, like their kill card, whatever. But his Papa 480 tattoos in his ear, and I'm looking at him like, and he had a scar above his eye from where we had gotten hurt while in country previous to actually getting hurt, just random stuff that had happened combat wise. But I knew it was him, and I just was like in shock that he was so just demeanor was off. He slept in the whole ride from there to my buddy's house who lived in Virginia. I was like, hey, I'm coming, who's a handler with me. The funniest thing is that night, didn't know what to do. They like gave me like a little bag of food and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll get, better food because science diet and the shit that they contracted and just bad for the dogs and whatever. So O'Hara and me and his mom are sitting in the living room, and Freeze was asleep in the kitchen on the floor on the tile. The dog had never seen a couch in his life. So like even leading him into their house, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be. I don't think he's going to destroy anything. This is all very new to him. And it goes right to that tile and just crashed. And so it was this like, okay, then we hear this, all this like rustling and stuff. And so we run into the kitchen, and he's got all four legs in the sink, and he's eating a full loaf of bread, like plastic and all. I shit you not. And my first reaction was like, what the fuck? Like, and O'Hara's mom took it it's okay, just let him eat. And so she took some of their dog food. And like he just ate and ate and ate and ate. And so I was like, maybe it was just that again, like rekindling that bond where he was.
Well, I think it was like, but it was like a Hollywood movie
Mm-hmm.
because he was broken, you were broken,
Sure.
you weren't the same, you weren't the same person, he wasn't the same dog that happened on October 5th. So I'm sure how long was it? Do you think it took before he was back to?
Oh shit! By the time I got back, that ride back from Virginia to Athens was like, I don't know, it was like 6-7 hours or something like that. It wasn't super long. Slept the whole way, got him there, and then the dog that I had got, thinking that I wasn't going to get Freeze back. Of course, they get into it because he's an alpha, so he did not get along with any of the other male dogs in our kennel because he's the alpha. So he's fine with the bitches. He had no problem. He had his little mohawk, and he would just get it. And I'm like, get your dog away, like back him up, man. Freeze is not the one. And lo and behold, they got into it, and Freeze is Freeze. And there it was. And he was all like, I would take him, I'd go to like Walmart, I'd go to like Home Depot and stuff, and like no lead, like nothing. And just, he'd walk, and didn't have like one of the little vests on him and all that shit. And people, like, he's the dog I had in the Marine Corps, like not had, like handled in the Marine Corps. And they're like, oh, okay, enjoy your day. Like nobody, even I would take him to the bars, I would take him like to class and stuff like that. And I just knew that it wasn't a good fit for us because I was at an apartment, had a decent area. I mean, to be able to go and let him out and do all that, but he needed that environment, a yard, and just, you get to enjoy just as much as I do. And I don't want to be here. So I sure as shit know you don't want to be here. And that's kind of another initial reason as to why I'm like, I don't know how well this is going to work out here. And I thought about, I'm so glad I didn't, but like buying a house, like using, your VA loan and stuff like that. Not a good thing to do, buy a house in a college town, unless you're going to eventually flip it or do something like that, I guess. But figured, yeah, coming back home. And then just from there was initially trying to set myself up to purchase my first home, our first home, together and stuff like that, to give him, I needed a yard. And so that was the other issue, I guess, with being down there. But yeah, he popped back pretty quick. So
how much did he help you heal?
Oh, I don't think I could have done it without him. Yeah, it was, I couldn't imagine what his thought process would be, just because of mine was already so just disgruntled and angry and sad and happy that I'm not, and we're not doing it, but also upset, just mix of emotions. So we kind of like balanced each other out, spent a lot of time with them, parks and walking and doing stuff, even taking them to walking trails. And that dog needs to be on a leash. And it's like, fuck off, keep jogging. Like, just being very, very, polite in comparison. But it was, he needed me just as much as I needed him. So it was, I'm very, very fortunate. Even being there, I couldn't imagine going through the deployment again, without having him, without having the dogs. Even some of the other guys, we'd come back from patrol, like, again, going back into the whole, things kind of loosened up a little bit the longer we were there. Like, we'd have guys that would come back from patrol and they'd come over and just want to pet the dog. It reminds me of home, just like that nice, like, not anchor, but reminder of like, it's something that's kind of close to home. A dog, especially a lab at that, it's, like, goofy and very
goofy dog,
America's dog for a reason, because they're, just, they've got those personalities. So
yeah, but I don't. It sparked me to, like I told you, there's we figured the name was War Dogs, right? It's a movie that's on that I talked about before in another episode that, like, made me cry instantaneously about the dogs not being. One story was the dogs not being reconnected back with their handler, and like, I don't know what the laws are, but the military needs to change that. If a dog works with a handler and they have a bond, they definitely need to somehow get them back together. It's got to be good. It has to be good for, like, it goes back to the one thing about Ports with Patriot. Like, if it helps someone get to, like you said before,
sure.
like, if it helps you, it helps that person. It's got to help the dog. Like, it's got to be better than them, being put to work at a sheriff's department, and then, or just even like someone like me, like I have a huge appreciation of adopting that dog, but it's not, it's not who they
Sure.
they probably long to be with, and I think that's important. It's the same thing we have as soldiers. They were one of us, and we want to be with. We like
like-minded individuals.
We like everybody, but like there's that love of each other that I think ultimately we never get back, right? So,
For sure.
Because some people, are gone forever, but it changes, and I have to feel like they've seen the same things we've seen, and they have to feel the same way we feel, so.
Connection, that's the biggest thing of, helping heal. Just it works both ways, and it definitely, it was really important. I'm very, very fortunate that able to spend as much time as I did with him. So.
Yeah, and you're not like this is why it's a great story. That it's a great place to end it, because it's not the norm, Sean. Right? Like there's a lot of these like dogs that never get back to the handlers.
No,
they live. It doesn't happen very often, and something needs to change. Where the last thing Marines will come. A Marine is Marine. Like Freeze needs to be in a kennel.
Oh, Freeze! Yeah, he's definitely a Marine. He's definitely put in. He went through more. So I think this is as bad as it sounds. Freeze is more of a Marine than some Marines that I've met, and I always try to keep that to myself, because I never want to put somebody down by putting trying to one up in that sense. And he definitely deserves the notion that wasn't just a dog, and that mindset has definitely changed throughout the course of time. Some of the Vietnam guys and stuff like that, they had 4,000 plus dogs that were in service over there, and I think only 200 of them actually came back. Mott's Military Museum, that's down by Obetz, they have a really nice memorial there for all the dogs and stuff like that. It's nice to know that there is that option, but it's not as streamlined as it should be. So I don't know, just
it should be something that's pretty easy. But if you've ever served the military or in the government, nothing is easy. But it's worth the fight. Like one of the things I definitely want to look into and figure out what the process is. And because I remember looking in Texas, because there's a lot of dogs who are going back there for a reason, but there was you could go, you put in a application to get this you can meet this out. It was a long application. I remember it's 3 or 4 pages. And at the time, my wife wanted to do that, and I'm looking at it, and part of me was like, man, you want to get them out of the kennels, but I'm also like, why aren't they just going right to the people that, because I feel like I guess I don't know, but there's some people that probably do want them, and maybe it's not some people don't, because it may have a different effect that you had. We don't know, but I just feel like dogs like Freeze and the working dogs, they you're right, they were more than just dogs. They were our brothers and sisters. It'd be interesting to see how many lives they've changed and saved, and it's unbelievable. You hear stories that
even. Yeah, the connection with the families and stuff like that. I mean, I think it was really awesome for my parents, my family and friends that had heard so much and knew so much about Freeze, but never got the chance to meet him, and then finally getting that moment where they're able to give their thanks and stuff like that. And it was definitely. I wish that it would be a little bit more out there for guys and gals to adopt their dogs. It's definitely a lot easier, but it's not as easy as it should be. There's still a lot of stuff behind it, handling priorities and stuff like that. Like another guy that was a handler with us, his wife contacted me after I got Freeze back, and then after Rocky got back with O'Hara, trying to rekindle, basically adopt his dog that he had when we were there. And so we went through all this. I talked to Kale and did all this, and they found him. Or found her, and she went on another deployment with the second handler, and the second handler basically, I guess, asked to adopt her first. And so he's like, oh man, he's like, no harm, no foul. You tried. At least she's with somebody that she knows.
Right.
And he knew, I think B ended up going down to Florida or something. He's like, oh, she's sitting in a fucking pool somewhere, just being junkyard dog, because we used to call her junkyard dog. But so there are good stories that are out there. There's bad stories that are, I guess, through the media and stuff like that too. There was that thing going around for a while that, they just left all these dogs in Afghanistan. All the dogs that were there working, they just left them there and blah, blah. That's blown way out of proportion. Even with the pullout, Afghanistan and all that, there was all that stuff on the news. A lot of the dogs that were over there were like people that contractors and workers and stuff like that, but they were personal dogs, not military working dogs. So not left, but a lot more red tape on trying to, especially in a hectic exit like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't always true, but there are options. There are options to adopt dogs, but especially the military working dogs, there's a little bit more red tape with it. But,
yeah, and if you're looking at the adoption process, the first thing I would say is just ask if they've tried to find a handler and
sure
what the status of that the handler is. And yeah, it is different. Like it's right. It's gotten better, but it shouldn't be. It should be pretty transparent. It should be pretty easy at this point. It's as long as many years as it's been, and like I said before, they are our brothers and sisters. So we're coming to the part, like, I want to thank you first for coming on. I want to thank you for sharing your story, sharing Frieza's story, sharing Sergeant Farias' story about that night. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And unfortunately, it comes to the time of the night that we honor a fellow Patriot, or in this case, a Marine, who decided to take their life. And again, one of the messages we try to say here is at Ports with Patriots and any of the organizations that are trying to really end what's going on is every story is different. Everybody is dealing with different things.
Sure.
Sean was talking about being a combat wounded, veteran. When I think about my problems, I'm like, wow, I have all my limbs. He doesn't. So the same thing, like you talked about, giving people that didn't deploy a hard time. So there's all these emotions that go into it, but everyone's out there. We're still all of us are, we're one, we're brothers and sisters. We're all together. And there's obviously better options. And what we've been trying to push here in a year or so now with Ports of Patriots is, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a veteran, you have to be there. But if you're a civilian person, you need to be there. Just be there. And then the other part of it, we tell all the veterans out there is be resilient. It's a bad choice. I've shared before. I've been there before, but I've thought about it, but I just won't. It's not in my DNA to do that, and sure. I don't fault anybody and do it, but other than that, it's a bad decision. And there's people out there that it gets better and life gets better. So tonight we're going to honor a fellow Marine of yours. Tonight we're going to honor U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Adam James Lambert, 24. Adam took his life on July 5th, 2015 in Able, Iowa. Adam was born May 30th, 1991 in Lincoln, Nebraska. After graduating from high school, Adam enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Adam served in Okinawa, Japan, and had one combat deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. According to his father, everyone who could depend on Adam, regardless of a friend's problem, it all seemed better after talking to Adam. He had a perspective on life that made so much sense to others. When all else failed, Adam's amazing humor cured everything. For Adam, laughter was truly the best medicine. This is what made him a great son, brother, grandson, cousin, nephew, and friend. Empathetic beings like Adam give a little piece of themselves to help others gain hope, strength, and power to overcome difficulties. Adam is survived by his mother, Jill, his father, Dean, his sisters, Mackenzie and Anna, his grandparents, Jim and Laura, and his grandfather, Louis Lambert. And again, if you're a veteran or you know someone that is suffering from PTSD, whatever you want to call it, or thoughts of suicide, you absolutely need to call the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-3855, or you can just simply dial 988, or if you want to text, you can text 838-255 to get the help. But if you can't reach out, like we've always said, just reach out to someone who you can talk to. It doesn't matter who they are, but definitely reach out. And what's interesting story about Adam, and it's going to come up on a post later on the night, but Adam's father, like many parents, probably was not very happy about the decision that his son made, and was very prominent in helping some legislature that got pushed on. And right now from our state of Ohio, this is a great thing to say, but there's legislation that was pushed. It's the Daniel J. Harvey Jr. and Adam Lambert Improving Service Member Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act. This is a act by a U.S. Senator here in Ohio, a representative in Iowa, another one in Connecticut, and also in Rhode Island. And it's a bipartisan legislation to support the mental health needs of service members and veterans as they return to civilian life and in their local communities. And what's great about this is, we don't get into politics, but the key word is bipartisan. And I'm not going to tell you who the senators are, but they both are Democratic and Republican. And one of the key things that's up there is it's there to help that transition. I think Sean talked about that a little bit earlier, really quickly. I don't know if you caught it, but a lot of the times it was, hey, one day you're a Marine, or one day you're a soldier, and then next day you're not. There's not a lot of transition that needs to happen to help with the issues that we have that are simple. Like I heard this a couple weeks ago, but when you get out of the Marine Corps, you get out of the Army, you lose your job, right? You lose your friends.
Feel like you lose your identity.
Yeah, that's the third thing. So it no matter who you are, I don't care, whether you get out as an 06 or an E4 or whatever, those three things happen immediately. You lose a job, you lose your friends. And that's a hard thing to say that people don't understand. Like what I mean by friends is like someone that you're there with all the time, and you have such a common bond with. Yeah, you can call them, but you're not with them anymore. And then the big thing is identity, and that's the thing, is that we lose an identity that some of us never can get back, right? Which I tell all the veterans is, being a veteran or a Marine or a soldier is just one of the identities that you can have in your life. You can be a dad, you can be you can be a business owner, you can be whatever, but those are key things. But I just want to read, I know it's gotten long, but one of the things that is from, I give the Ohio State University a lot of heartache, but
that's okay.
This bill, one of the things that signed on to it is from a Marine Corps veteran, Tom Weeke. I don't know how he pronounces it, but he's a U.S. Marine veteran and a social work student at Ohio State University. And he talked about this legislation that Adam, is part of. Is this piece of legislation is the first step towards properly transitioning our nation's veterans after their service. Our current transition program does not prepare our veterans for the grief and emotional and mental stressors they will face once they leave the military. We have witnessed our failure to address the transition process and the staggering rates of veteran suicide, substance misuse, and homelessness. By providing them with the valuable knowledge and healthy support system to navigate their transition, they will be more likely to succeed in their post-military lives. So if you don't know about this bill, it's going to come up. You definitely need to support it. Regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, it's important. And again, we'll end with a quote. There's so many great quotes it's last night I found myself like, wow, these are rough, but it's again a long one, and I apologize. I know we're going long in the podcast, but I don't care. It's an important story that you had to tell, so it is. So I'm gonna go with a quote from Luke Ryan. It's a little long, but it kind of, I think, will sum up. I hope it resonates with you. That's kind of who I'm trying to hit when I'm talking about these quotes. So it says, "How can I thank you when you never had a choice, and yet I do? Every day I ponder the life of a creature who traded places with me on the stairway to the eternal. What does it say about me to be so inspired by a beast? Or what does it say about a beast that he should so inspire the hearts of men? Such combinations of loyalty and love, grace and bravery, strength and innocence. Should that such combinations exist within my own heart? But I am merely a man, clumsy and corrupt, not like you, unsoiled with the nonsense of men. How can I thank you when you never had a choice? I don't know what to think about that. I don't know how to think about that, but my gratefulness will endure for as long as my corrupt heart will beat." So I didn't know he'd be with us. So let's see you, Freeze. Let's see you, Sean, and all your fellow dog handlers. And again, thank you for coming on for episode 34. Yeah. We'll see everybody in a week. We have some weird scheduling changes like the Sean. I got to
it's my fault.
Readjust now. It's important, but thank you for coming on, and we'll see everybody in a week. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.